amendments to the minutes of the March 14th, 2022 meeting.
Move to approve minutes.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. This time I'll open it up to citizens to be heard. If there's any citizens in the crowd that would like to speak to an item that is not on the agenda.
Design by holding 2 meetings in one day. No one liked the design, poles in concrete, yet the CRA staff proceeded with the concept design, added the shade element, and in May of 2020 submitted design to the CRA trustees for consideration, and after being tabled for additional changes, was approved in June of 2020. The community never saw the new design, which now included the large stage structure before it was approved. No press updates were released with the new design. 3, the actual space does not exist right now. When the streetscape project is complete, the usages can be better evaluated. No one knows how big or what shape it actually is. 4, the East Great CRA generates lots of funds for the CRA. The community wishes should be respected. And finally, there is a new trustee, a new city manager, new CRA staff, and new people to work with in the Eastgate community to generate new workable ideas. Working together will unify this community. A concrete pad will tear it apart. Pause construction, install grass, and get a plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flaherty. Anyone else? We've also received some emails this morning about this. I would like to talk about it at the end of the CRA. We'll move on to item 4.1.
Confirm the city manager's appointment of John Jennings as the interim CRA executive director.
Questions? Councilman?
I'm fine with this. I worry about, the amount of tasks and the job, requirements. I'm wondering, how long do you think you'd serve as an interim, and how easily do you think it will be to fill this position, considering we have so many openings?
I only see actually fulfilling this responsibility for maybe 2 to 3 months while we search for a new CRA director. In terms of being able to fill a position, we'll have to see what the market, what is available in the market. So it hasn't been easy to fill positions, as you all know, and so we'll have to just see what happens. But just to answer your query, I feel very confident that I can
Do it all?
Yeah. I mean, we do have a terrific CRA staff, so there's a lot of work happening.
I understand. I agree with the Vice Mayor. I am a little bit concerned about being stretched too thin. So I hope we can fill this position pretty quickly. I don't want to just take anybody, but at the same time, there's a lot of changes going on, and for you to take on this additional responsibility, you say you've got it handled, so we'll see.
Appreciate the vote.
Any other questions or comments? Anyone from the public to speak to item 4.1?
I had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Jennings at the Eastgate community meeting last week, and everyone there was very impressed by him, and we look forward to working for him. So I just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
A motion.
Jones Street LLC in an amount not to exceed $1 million for building improvements to implement the CRA Vacancy Reduction Grant Program, Part A and B, and authorize the appropriate officials to execute same. Good morning. I'm Matt Jackson, CRA Assistant Director. The subject property is located at the southwest corner of Myrtle Avenue and Jones Street. The applicant has applied for a $1 million grant from the CRA to renovate approximately 18,000 square feet of vacant and underutilized space and construct an additional 8,500 square feet of space to support an audio-visual immersive museum with a focus on sports memorabilia. The estimated total project cost is approximately $3.5 million. The project will be a complete renovation, including new facades, new roof, windows, doors, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, HVAC, floor system, and a fire sprinkler system. The current request does not include any kitchen equipment. 703 Jones Street LLC is the owner of the building. They will lease to Arts District Live. Steve Steller is the authorized decision maker for 703 Jones Street LLC. The applicant believes that the Immersive Museum as an art meets technology hub is a catalytic use and qualifies for a Part B grant. Staff, after reviewing the application, believes the application and supplemental materials from Part A and B are substantially complete. The proposed use of an immersive museum, the building improvements, and the project location are consistent with the goals and objectives of the 2018 downtown redevelopment and 2021-2023 CRA strategy. Specifically, regarding the downtown redevelopment plan, it will promote the visual and performing arts, create and activate space to work as signature destinations, gathering places that promote economic growth for development, and encourage redevelopment that contains a variety of buildings, forms, and styles. Regarding the CRA strategy, it will increase investor confidence, help attract $50 million in private investment, and reduce the number of ground floor vacant commercial buildings by 10%. Finally, it will improve the physical appearance of a blighted residential or commercial property. The quality of the proposed improvements and use to reduce visual blight and prepare the building for occupancy justify a full Part A grant award. Arts District Live is a world-class immersive arts, technology, and entertainment hub, which will be unique to downtown. The programming will occur in a sports-themed interactive museum, a 360-degree rooftop theater, and wonder room. The sports memorabilia attraction is one of a kind, utilizing pieces from the sports morals, one of the largest curated sports memorabilia collections in the world. The unique world-renowned art technology hub, providing a first-class, high-quality immersive audiovisual experience, justify a full Part B grant award. The applicant proposes a financial match from private equity sources and can meet the required 18-month construction timeline. Staff recommends establishing grant approval of up to a maximum of $1 million for the proposed project and moving forward with developing a grant agreement. If the CRA trustees wish to move forward with awarding a 5-year loan to grant agreement for Part B and B, the following conditions will apply. A final project budget, including cost estimates and matching funds for eligible interior and exterior improvements that will establish the final CRA grant amount not to exceed $1 million. A building permit obtained, a business tax receipt, a tenant lease, a payment schedule, and a commitment to a 5-year loan to grant agreement secured through one or more of the following methods: a mortgage on the property, a personal guarantee, or a promissory note. With that, your approval is recommended, and Jacob Feldman, representing Arts District Live, the proposed tenant, is here to make a presentation on the proposed immersive museum.
Good morning.
Morning, everybody. How are you? Let me
Thanks.
pop open a slideshow for you. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Arts District envisions public spaces reinvented, tech-enabled gathering places, not just for shopping, not just for shopping and dining, but also for entertainment, social interaction, and community building. Young people, professionals, and baby boomers alike are spending an increasing portion of their disposable income on experiences rather than things. This has been a trend over the last decade, but has accelerated as the pandemic has begun to give way to our new future. It's widely expected that the experience economy will continue to grow post-COVID, and we hope to help the city of Clearwater take advantage of that growth and become a leader in Florida for art, technology, and community, solidifying its place as one of the top destinations in the country. We intend to bring to 703 Jones Street not just a community venue, but a destination-level arts technology hub anchored by experiential entertainment. Arts District's management team has decades of experience in live theater, music, and film production, with billions in combined revenue. And our lab team has been the beneficiary of over $30 million in R&D investment in the last decade. Our patent-pending Wonder Room creates a limitless digital environment where the walls disappear like a Star Trek holodeck. And audiences can walk through the open world of an entirely new place rather than through VR glasses or simply viewing a two-dimensional image on a screen, much like being physically transported into a story itself. Our first installation at the warehouse on Jones Street will be Limitless AI, created by Arts District and Ouch Collective, the world's foremost digital art studio, and in collaboration with the CERN Institute in Switzerland and NASA, and debuting in Brooklyn this summer. The piece's first movement, Poetic AI, sold over 1 million tickets in Paris in 2018. And that show spawned the global appetite for large-scale immersive art. The piece's final movement, Superstrings AI, if it will move forward, is a real-time look into a musician's brain. Through artificial intelligence, our computers generate original artwork based on the musician's brain activity. And notice how the art changes as the music does. But the computer is not listening to the music, only to the brain activity of the musician. This installation is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the potential of these technologies to create stories and experiences for live audiences. This is not just a movie or art projected on walls. This is true immersion. In addition, Arts District in Clearwater will present the first Sports Immortals Immersive exhibition. The Sports Immortals collection, as Matt said, is the largest and most diverse assortment of sports mementos in the world, valued at over $300 million. Joel Platt, its founder, with his son Jim, has been collecting these memorabilia for the last 6 decades, much of it directly from the athletes and their families. The Platts and Arts District will curate an exhibit designed specifically for the city of Clearwater and its history in sports. The exhibition hall will feature interactive holographic stages on which these heroes of sport will come to life and interact with patrons. In addition, we'll create environments and stories inside our Wonder Room to complement the installations. Imagine being at the game where Babe Ruth called his shot at Wrigley Field. Imagine yourself in a front row seat for the Rumble in the Jungle. Imagine yourself sitting in the bleachers at Clearwater Athletic Field on March 15, 1923, for the first spring training game between the Brooklyn Dodgers and the Boston Braves. Finally, we've partnered with Vortex Immersion Media, a pioneering and award-winning 360 Dome immersion company who's worked with the top global brands as well as transformational content. Their most recent production, Mesmerica, sold out 30 cities and over 300,000 tickets in its first year prior to a pandemic-related pause. Vortex will install a dome on the top of the warehouse, both as an opportunity for further activation as well as a beacon to draw the community's collective eye toward us. Both Arts District and Sports Immortals have the ability to collaborate with the Vortex Dome, creating additional content and giving us multiple unique ways of activation. The facility will be laid out like this, with the Arts District's Wonder Room in the upper warehouse, Sports Immortals occupying the lower 2, and Vortex's dome sitting atop it. The facility sits at the intersection of Jones Street and North Myrtle Avenue, just outside the downtown core, and significantly, with rear frontage just 100 feet from the intersection of the Peneus Trail and Drew Street, which the CRA's adopted development plan identifies as the most appropriate for restaurant, brew pub, or cultural uses. Just as our team at Arts District built a theater in an underdeveloped neighborhood in Toronto and helped transform it into the coolest place in the city and one of the coolest places in the world, so too do we hope to make downtown Clearwater into a destination for entertainment and to be part of its transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Albritton.
Well, more of a comment than a question. I got to tell you, I'm really excited about this concept coming to downtown, and I can tell you that we've been looking at this building, or I've been looking at this building for probably over 15 years as something that had real potential in our downtown. So thank you for discovering it and putting this in that place. I think it'll be a real boon for downtown.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Councilmember Bunker.
Again, just a comment, I'm incredibly impressed with what you're going to bring here. I think it will be a real destination hub, and I love the work that you did turning around that area in Toronto. So, be very exciting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I'm still on my kid's Snapchat. They block me on and off, but some of the things that they do is, you know, film their activities through, in their travels. And that experience has been on my children's Snapchat several times, and I'm so happy that I can now film my own eventually.
Fantastic.
It's, they have always told me that that was one of the memorable experiences in that particular city that they were in, so I'm looking forward to having our very own.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I think it looks exciting as well. When I was doing my research or homework over the weekend with this, I couldn't find anything like it. Is there something like it out there that's?
It's a great question. In terms of the immersive entertainment side of things, Limitless AI, it is what we're doing in Brooklyn is really the first of its kind. There are other immersive arts destinations in the world. As I said, there's one in Paris that's been around for about 7 years. There is an immersive museum in Miami called Super Blue. There are a couple of others scattered around the country, but there is no single hub that is dedicated to the creation of new IP in this way using only digital projection. Most of those other experiences, which are fantastic, use technology to look backward at art that already exists, but the ability to use this technology to create new art, new experiences, draw people out of their homes for new ideas and new stories, the way that movie theaters have, the way that live theater does, that truly is groundbreaking in that way. In terms of the Sports Immortals exhibit, there is nothing in the world like this. Marrying sports memorabilia of this quality and this caliber, and you know, when Jim and his father walked me through their collection, my jaw was on the floor. I mean, it's just amazing. And to be able to bring that to life in this way, there is nothing like that in the world.
Fantastic. I'm thinking that sports memorabilia, the exhibition hall, would that be rotating exhibits?
Yeah. So the long-term vision for this is that we create this format. This format then becomes a launching pad for exhibitions like it around the country. And then what we're able to do with the vast collection that they have is to rotate content over the course of months so that we are constantly refreshing what's there, depending on the season, depending on the location, and things that work we replicate, and things that are less attractive to people, we rotate out in favor of new material. But because it's all digital, it's so easy to replace it with new material, and that's the objective.
Except the sports memorabilia is actually the memorabilia.
That is the actual memorabilia which will be installed and will be integrated into the experience, but because their vault is so deep, we can always reach in for more things when we need them and move them to other places when they're appropriate.
Do you envision when people enter the facility that they pay for a specific room?
Yeah, this is as yet to be determined by our, the experts we have in the museum field, as well as, our people on the live experience field. But the idea would be that there would be an admission price for the Sports Immortals exhibit. There would be an admission price for evening activations in the Wonder Room, that those would be separately ticketed. You can bundle them, there are all sorts of things. And our marketing partner in New York is an expert in sort of creating packages in this way and pushing all this stuff out on social media. So much of I'm sure you've seen some of their advertisements already without knowing that you've seen them. But yes, that would be the idea, that each of these things could be separately ticketed if they needed to be, or bundled together as a single.
Okay, and I guess our last question is, do you have any sustainability features built into your development?
It's certainly in the pipeline, and it's certainly part of the vision to be looking toward sustainability, to be looking toward green energy, to be looking toward ways that we can integrate into sustainability infrastructure in the city. I think it will take our having sort of confirmation and go-ahead that we then begin to tap into what resources are here in Clearwater and to find out what the long-term possibilities are for us. What we have right now is a vision for what we do with the building. How we do it will get determined once we're on the other side of that decision.
We do have a green print sustainability plan, so it'd be, there's approval today. That'd be great if you got familiar with that.
I would
That would be fantastic, and we certainly do have those resources on our side as well, so,
Thank you.
great.
It looks very exciting,
Thank you.
visually stunning. This is a big number. I mean, it looks to be about 30% of your budget. How is your capitalization? Do you have all of your finances?
We do, so
Other
we-
than what we're gonna be contributing potentially in place?
To varying degrees, and it depends on how we look at it. So we have private equity, and our private equity backers have backed us in Brooklyn and will continue to back us portfolio-wide. We certainly are incredibly grateful for money forthcoming from the city if it does come. We have tech partners that will provide us with backing for the technology, for some of the technology pieces that go into the project. And so some of that will get financed through them or we'll get back through them. And then whatever is left over, once we get confirmation from you and from our private equity to seek out any gap funding we need, we have resources to do so.
Okay. They have 18 months to get this done. Our money comes at the end.
Correct. Once the building permits have been approved, that's when the agreement is executed, and it's a reimbursement process.
So let me ask you, the dome, has the planning department looked at that design?
The planning department has done a preliminary review. They met with them months ago. I've also met with 2 members of the planning department to discuss a few topics, but nothing has come up that would stop the project.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not going to run into a wall, you know,
Absolutely.
due to the planning and zoning. We don't have many trains that go by, but at one time we were looking at putting a movie theater on East Avenue,
Okay.
which was almost 2 decades ago. But the vibrations concern the movie theater operators.
Okay.
Is that something that is an issue potentially for your folks? I think we have 1 train a week now. So it's one of the most underutilized lines in the entire country, but it still exists.
Vibrations are certainly an issue, but it's not an issue that we're unfamiliar with. Our location in Brooklyn, for instance, is on a major thoroughfare for trucking, and there are a lot of trucks that go by every day. So one of the things that we do with engineering is to create a trussing system with vibration absorbing materials so that we can mitigate any sort of damage to or alteration to the installation. The other upside is that the part with the vast majority of the installation is the part apart from that train. The main warehouse where Wonder Room goes has a good 100 feet, 150 feet of separation from the train tracks, whereas where Sports Immortals is more aligned with the train tracks. So that should benefit us in that way. But of course, we'll need to find out what really happens when a train goes by, and we'll account for it accordingly.
What is going to be your rough capacity?
We do have capacity numbers on the diagram. I don't remember what it said.
450 is
450 in the
flow capacity.
450 is the flow capacity. And is that the whole building, or is that just Wonder Room?
200 capacity rooftop with the.
Why don't you come up, because
Come.
people at
Let me
home need to
introduce
be hearing what you're
Mark was
saying.
one of my colleagues.
Mark Legere with Arts District. I'm also on the board of directors of Vortex Immersion, and actually have a long time history with Sports Immortal. So the capacity, flow capacity is 450. We've also looked at a max of 200 rooftop dome. And I'd like to add one nuance, which may not be outwardly obvious, about both the Wonder Room space and the dome space, which I think the city will appreciate. Now that the world has been Zoomified during the pandemic and online, the ability to have these events, whether they're the entertainment events, the sports events, whether they're city talks, TED-like talks, things like that, we can stream those in a 360 way that wasn't possible before. So the ability to bring the world to the rooftop of our tech hub or into our Wonder Room is unique. Also another adjunct that we'll be able to use. So that will affect the flow.
So how do you monetize that?
There'll be different ways. You can do it through subscription, you can do it on pay-per-view. There's a whole number of models that we can plug into. There's also the opportunity to support nonprofits. We do a lot of cause-related shows. So our desire and the whole nuance about community renewal is to actually really truly plug into the community source local talent where applicable, to source local artists, the possibility to project local artists and feature them, and then also wellness program. So the ability to use sound and light in these spaces is a whole new conversation, which you probably don't have time for today, but it's a powerful format.
And do you own any other land around the site? I'm not gonna do the planning department's job, but I'm always concerned about parking.
Regarding parking, we will have to address the parking. The actual use doesn't require any parking spaces. I did discuss with planning on their proposed parking and loading area, that it can be used, it will be okay. We have the Garden Street Garage just a few blocks away, but that is something we will have to discuss.
Okay. Anything else from the council? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Do I have a motion?
Move to approve item 4.2.
Second.
Anyone from the public to speak to this item?
I put my name down, I just was in support of it, I think this is a great idea. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Fleur. I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.3.
Amend the operating budget for the Community Redevelopment Agency for fiscal year 21-22 and adopt CRA Resolution 22-01.
Congratulations, gentlemen, that's it.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
No obligation to stay, it's pretty boring stuff.
The purpose of this item is to request approval to amend the CRA's operating budget to add a new full-time position, CRA Special Events Specialist. The CRA's main goal is shifting the perception held by the public and investors about downtown to one that encourages investment. Supporting a wide variety of events and programs in downtown is a key part of our strategy. In anticipation of Coachman Park opening in summer 2023 and the continued closure of Cleveland Street, the CRA wishes to provide a greater number of events and greater assistance to event producers to ensure a full calendar of activities throughout the year. The proposed position will serve as a liaison to Parks and Recreation staff, event producers, and merchants to help coordinate their efforts as well as produce new CRA events. The current interlocal agreement allocated up to $115,000 to cover the cost of new and temporary employees for this fiscal year. Exhibit A shows the transfer of funds from salaries and benefits to City General Fund Administrative, which will cover the cost of the proposed position. This time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yes.
You do have a question.
Well, I hope we can fill it, again, it sounds like a fun job. I mean, I think it'd be exciting, there's lots of potential. I hope we can get it filled as soon as possible.
The job is posted, and already I've received phone calls and interest in the position
Great,
from qualified individuals.
that helps if they're qualified.
Yes, I wanted to throw that in there. There isn't.
Yeah.
Anyone from the public to speak to this item? Have a motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.4.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.4.
Annual financial report.
You said 4.3.
She said-
Yeah. No, I
No, she said 4.4.
But it was 4.3.
So let me change that then. Motion to approve agenda 4.3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.4.
Good morning, Monica Mitchell, Assistant Finance Director. This agenda item is for the presentation of the CRA's annual audit for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021. This is our second year of preparing separately audited standalone financial statements for the CRA pursuant to a new requirement in Chapter 163 of the Florida statutes, which governs community redevelopment. Later this morning at the council work session, the auditors will be presenting their findings on the City of Clearwater's audit. The CRA funds have always been included in the city's audit and audited at the fund level. However, this standalone audit includes testing for compliance with certain provisions of Chapter 163, which is not included in the city's audit. Now I would like to turn the presentation over to David Alvarez, partner in charge with Carvings and Ingram.
Thank you. I'm sure there was no intended sort of comment about this wouldn't be the most exciting part of today's meeting.
No, it's
I'll do my
4.3, but this
best.
is
Yeah,
scintillating.
this is fantastic. So, how do I bring up, there we go. So as Monica said, we're presenting, this is the audit of the CRA's financial statements as of September 30, 2021. And just, again, wanted to point out that this is the second year that you guys have had to issue standalone financial statements. So the city's been issuing standalone financial statements for many, many years. The CRA now gets their own packet. So included in those financial statements, there are a handful of auditors' opinions and letters. In the front of the financial statements is our main auditor's opinion, where we opine on the fair presentation of those financial statements. Included in that report is we issue an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that auditors provide. Once you then move to the back of the financial statements, there's a couple other letters that are required either by government auditing standards or by the Florida Auditor General. The Auditor General in our state is pretty active, so we get some extra reports that most other states don't have. So the first one being the Government Auditing Standards Report, clearly required by government auditing standards. Within this report, we would state whether we have identified any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls around financial reporting, or if we had identified other matters of non-compliance in relation to financial reporting, and we had no such issues to present in that report. Then, as you move back, we go to the management letter. This is an Auditor General report. There's a myriad of things that the Auditor General wants us to respond to. So this is a prescribed letter. They give us the exact wording, and if there were any items of note, we would state those in various paragraphs. In this letter, there's a couple of new things in there that the AG is asking for. They're now asking about number of employees, number of contractors, compensation paid to various employees and contractors. They ask about millage and they ask about bonds. So you'll see those new items that we're preparing or that we're disclosing in that management letter, but nothing of real importance to note in that letter. The last two are really compliance reports, again required by the Auditor General. The first one is in regards to investment policies. So Florida statutes 218 is about investment policies, states that either the city has to have their own investment policy or they have to follow just the state's basic investment policy. The city or the CRA participates with the city in their investment program. So we test that the city is in compliance with their own policy. They've met all the requirements, and the city does. So we have no items to report in the investment policy report. The last one is on compliance around redevelopment trust funds. So there's specific compliance specifically to CRAs. Last year we had one small comment, because last year was the first year that they prescribed that really the timing of when the budget for the CRA had to be turned into the county. Pretty much every CRA in this first year did not meet that 10-day requirement. Now everyone is aware, and I think Monica was most excited for when we asked for the documentation of when the budget was sent in. I think she had that one like queued up in her email to send to us, because there was not a repeat of that finding. Everything was good. So that's all that I have on the CRA's presentation, unless there's any questions.
Questions? It's a great report. Give a lot of credit to our staff. Obviously, we appreciate that.
Great. Thank you.
Appreciate working with you, and we'll see you soon.
See you again.
Do I have a motion to approve the annual financial report?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Jennings, Mr. CRA Director, do you want to give us your viewpoint on the Mercado? And I am concerned that we're dumbing down the plan.
Yes, well, thank you, Mayor, for asking that question. It was something that I did want to opine on this morning. There were several emails that we've received over the course of the last week concerning the project. Like everything that we're experiencing, they are significant cost increases. And so the messaging that went out to the community should have been that we're just postponing this project to see whether we can afford it, the costs come down on the Mercado project. we're looking at this across the board. Later this morning, you'll hear from about the Marine Division, you know, the cost overruns there. We're having significant issues across the board. So instead of, as you said, dumbing down a project, which I completely agree with you, all we're doing is pausing right now to see if we can find, hopefully in the near future, a less costly solution, or continue with this solution that's been proposed once pricing comes down.
So are we pouring any concrete?
The plan is to continue to pour the concrete because the
You're gonna win.
Ms. Flaherty?
because the expectation is to continue with the Mercado project once the pricing comes down.
So you're talking about postponement with our fingers, take this in the spirit it's meant, with our fingers crossed, the pricing comes down.
Well, we're making a lot of those type of decisions today with the hope that there is a realignment on the current issues that we're seeing in the economy overall.
And I think we will see that, but it could take 12 to 18 months.
Yes.
And I don't think we'll go back to 2019 prices, but I think we will see. You're already starting to see it. I was at a dinner last night talking to people that are in different businesses, and they're starting to see some breaks. My only concern is, are we contractually obligated to go forward with the pours, or should we just not take a full step back at this time and wait?
Yes.
Well, we certainly can, I'll look into that as to whether we have a contractual obligation. It's just, the problem is when you fully postpone, it is something that then it gets forgotten down the road. And I think it's really critically important that East Gateway has this type of investment. And so what I wouldn't want to see is if we do just go to the grass, then it just continues just to be a grass esplanade and no improvements over time to the extent that it was originally designed.
What is the delta on the expense?
It's a couple $100,000 at this point.
For the shade structure?
Yes.
That's what's in question, yes. Over $200,000 than the original $500,000 proposed.
No one likes it.
Ms. Flaherty, if you can't control yourself, I'm going to ask you to leave the room.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Vice Mayor?
Are we allowed to use $200,000 from general funds to get the shade structure in now?
Well, we certainly could from reserves that the council would need to approve, but, you know, that's a fairly expensive proposition.
Out of the whole scheme of all of our reserves?
How about ARPA funds?
Yeah, so we created staff has recommended.
Yes.
There is a grant program that we could access.
I'd like staff to come back with several different solutions.
Okay.
And I'd like you to hold off on moving forward with anything else.
Okay.
At least that's my feeling. I don't know what the consensus is of the rest of the council. Councilmember Aldred and then the Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I agree. This, we've been talking about this a long time, and the design is, what I can recollect, has changed. Even the last iteration of it with the cloth roof. I want to see something that's noticeably, that really is good in that part of our downtown. And I don't want to put something in that the neighborhood's not going to like. And I would be okay with talking about, I think the mayor has the right idea, come back with some other alternatives. I'd like to see this go forward the way it's designed, but I'm up for listening to alternatives right now.
Vice Mayor.
What's the time schedule for pouring concrete? I mean, it's not scheduled to be poured next month, is it?
I don't know that. I would have to speak with the project manager, capital, and get that back to you.
Yeah, I just, you know, what I think about is, in light of Ms. Flaherty's 11 emails last week, and her documenting all of the, you know, newspaper articles and decisions and budget allocations that have been going on for a long time. And I was at a lot of those, well, some of those Mercado meetings a couple of years ago. Is that, you know, citizens were engaged in looking at this, and we've got this colorful shade structure, and when things get tight, you know, I get that prices go up, but prices go up throughout the entire city, and we make things happen at Imagine Clearwater and other places. And I think we owe it to this neighborhood and this community that we can put in $200,000. I mean, it's not a lot of money to make, you know, the shape structure happen there. To me, that's not knowing all of the financials, and, you know, Mr. Ravens or others can lay that out, but when I was asking for $250,000 more for case management, safe harbor, things like that, I did my calculations, and it was like, you know, 0.1% of the general fund budget. I mean, and so it's in the whole scheme of things. But I, you know, I think we should try to find a way. And when we talk about budget, you know, expenses that have gone up in light of COVID and supply chain, if we're talking about wave attenuators later in the regular work session, I mean, that's, you know, if we have continued damage in public safety, obviously that's different than this, but this is a small, to me, I think it's a good idea to have staff come back with some different solutions.
Understood.
It'd be interesting, it'd be interesting, I mean, I'm sort of even getting the feel that from Ms. Flaherty's conversations, and that is the community changing their mind and now they don't want concrete at all, or is it, I don't want concrete if I don't have shade? If they have the shade structure as depicted and as people, you know, gave feedback on in those community meetings, then I think that's fine. I don't think we should be flip-flopping at the very end just because community changes their minds, but, so.
Councilmember Shea.
This community has waited so long for this project, so long, and it's been postponed a few times, and I've seen the resurgence of this community excitement in the new East Gateway HOA, and I've seen how invested these people are, and I think they deserve for us to do a good job. So I'm of the mindset that we should put a hold and just kind of step back and reevaluate, because I really want to make these people happy because they have waited for so long. So let's do it right. So we take a little break and just step back and see what our options are forward.
Councilmember Bud.
Yes, I see no need to pour concrete right now. Let's look at the plans again, and as she said, let's do it.
All right, I think we have consensus. Anything else?
Yeah.
Vice Mayor?
Got a couple of questions. So I had a couple of questions about, you know, what's going on in our CRA. So what's going on with the building on the corner of Myrtle and Court? Do you have any updates on that?
Which building exactly at Myrtle and Court?
Right by Walgreens.
Right.
It's on
Chestnut.
Chestnut.
northwest corner of Chestnut and
Yeah.
Myrtle.
Our storage building that we currently have right now?
No.
No, it's supposed to be office and,
Oh, I'm sorry. That is a Ricasano project. It's still under building permit. I believe there's a few issues for them to come around with that building and then move forward. But we don't have an investment in that now. They're moving forward with their own funds.
what's their timeline that they had to have things completed?
Well, now that we're not.
They're not
tied to-
taking the
now that we're not-
500,000,
not?
so
Yeah.
it
Oh.
doesn't
No,
really matter.
because
Oh.
Expired
and-
December, January.
Okay, so they're
Yes.
out,
Correct. We're not tied to that project anymore.
okay. Any update on the storefront projects like the dueling pianos, and, I mean, what's going on with some of those businesses that were supposed to be coming in?
They're in the building permit phase, specific to Nash Keys. They ran into an issue with accessibility, where they were building out part of the second floor area that would be accessible to guests. And as part of that, they were working through exactly how they're going to get any ADA customers up to that space, whether it be an elevator, whether it be a lift. So I believe that's one of the final things that they're dealing with in their building permit.
When you mentioned ADA compliant, getting customers up to that space, there was, I had noticed in the development down by the Nolan, that we took that tour about that step down. Did they make that a ramp, or is it still a step?
It's still a step, but there is a ramp. If you recall, if you were going up that step to that other space right there where there's going to be the Topgolf as well as the other food vendors, there is a way to get from that area back through the hallway down a ramp into the other portion where they're going to have the beer and wine, that area. So it will absolutely still be ADA compliant, but there's just not a ramp and those steps we looked at.
And people don't have to go outside on the decking and then go around? So like if
No.
it's raining, people in a wheelchair don't have to go, okay,
No, entirely within the space.
okay. Any updates on what the CRA officers are seeing downtown? Any changes?
Can you clarify that question a little bit?
The two
Anything?
police officers
Yeah.
that are paid for by the CRA. That's more a chief question, I think.
Okay.
Understood. We haven't heard anything, either negative or positive from them, no.
Okay. Updates on the barriers, when they're gonna be installed, and
I would have to get with the engineering project manager on that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Mr. Jennings?
Yeah, again, supply chain issues. The latest from the engineering department is the end of May.
oh, so soon, in a couple weeks. Oh. All right. So I see the Market Marie is growing and doing really well, so they had their 1-year anniversary this past Saturday. Are they gonna, do they sign on for like a year contract, or how does that work?
I would be remiss if I said exactly how that, how long their timeline is. I can ask Eric Santiago, the project manager, and get that back to you.
Okay, same thing like with the Hispanic market, right?
The Hispanic market, I know we're discussing with them exactly where they're going to be holding their market, but no, there's not an agreement or anything in place right now.
Okay. Any other programming there for the summer, or?
We're working on it.
Okay. And then any plans for any kind of Juneteenth or gay pride events in the CRA area?
Not in the actual CRA area, due to my involvement with the North Greenwood Recreation Center, my years there. I was included in some discussions. There may be something in the proposed North Greenwood CRA area, but as you know, that's not currently active. But no, nothing in the actual CRA.
And council member, as you know from our meetings, staff is working on a plan for both Pride Month as well as
And then this kind of ties into, part of our discussion for the work session is going to be about management for the amphitheater, but, so it was my understanding, and we can get this clarified in the work session, that when we have events at the amphitheater, there will be opportunities for food trucks to be around that. Is there a plan do you think it might be prudent to start to engage with food trucks up in our CRA and downtown area before our grand opening next summer, so that we develop a relationship, people get to know them, and then they can just transition down to our events?
I want a discussion about that. I have very strong feelings about food trucks.
I agree.
And, we have brick and mortar people who are paying taxes, who've made an investment in the downtown, and to let food trucks in all the time, I am utterly opposed to.
So you're utterly opposed to food trucks up here in the downtown corridor?
Except for very unusual circumstances. I think it undermines the people who've made a long-term investment here. If it draws people for a very short type of an event, I can live with that because I think it could be additive. But to be doing it on a consistent basis, I think is unfair to the businesses that have made an investment in downtown Clearwater. I think it siphons business off, and I am completely opposed to it. So, yes?
as former president of DCMA, I urge you to talk to the merchants downtown and they can explain their views, but I'm very confident in saying that they would be against it. Downtown is not at the point where it can sustain food trucks and brick and mortar at the same time. We're simply not there yet. And to do that, we cannibalize the business.
I can agree with that. I mean, that's what I see as well. I also see a big hole in that for the employees downtown, people who are downtown. I don't know where you can do a grab-and-go deli sandwich in and out. And I think that, you know, a lot of people don't have an hour for lunch to go and sit down at a restaurant. And so a lineup, you know, deli-style
Graham's
offering.
had some anytime, been here for over a decade.
Okay.
So we'll look at that.
Okay. All right, and I think that's everything. I copied Miss Flaherty's email, so I think she's got her questions answered. So I'm all good.
All right, we are adjourned. We'll be back in a few minutes with the work session. call the work session for May 16th to order. Item 2.1. Actually, pension trustees. We'll adjourn for a moment the work session, call to order the pension trustees. I would ask if there are any amendments to the minutes of the February 14th meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Citizens to be heard? Are any citizens of the audience to speak to the pension trustees? Agenda item 4.1.
Good morning. A request to approve the new hires for acceptance into the pension plan as listed.
Any questions? Motion?
Motion to approve agenda item 4.1.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. 4.2.
Request to approve the following request of employees for a regular pension as provided by sections 2.416 and 2.424 of the employee's pension plan.
Questions? Motion?
Move to approve item 4.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. 4.3.
I would like to call up Jay Ravens, Finance Director, for this item.
Good morning, trustees. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. This item is requesting your formal acceptance of the plan's annual actuarial valuation dated January 1st, 2022. I would like to introduce the plan's actuary, Pete Strong, with Gabriel Roeder-Smith, who will review the valuation report with you.
Jay. Good morning, trustees. First of all, nice to be here in person again. It's the first time I've been here since 2019. It's great to present the 2022. And in this report, we have good news. The last couple of months has been a little rough, but as of January 1, 2022, the plan is in one of the best states of condition in the entire state. So if you could, if everyone has one of these valuation reports in front of them, I'm going to go through just a few pages of the report before I ask for approval of the report. First, starting on page 1, the discussion of valuation results. As you can see on this page, the required contribution is up slightly from last year, from 11.4 million to almost 11.7 million as a requirement. Right below the required contribution, we show the credit balance. The city has contributed excess money over and above the minimum required contribution in past years, and that's helped to build up a credit balance or a reserve that can be used to offset contributions in a year in which the contributions spike up, unexpectedly. That credit balance is now $33.8 million, so a nice healthy cushion. It would absorb, at the current rate of required contribution, almost 3 years of required contributions if it were to be used. At the bottom of page 1, we have a breakdown. A couple years ago, we started breaking down the contribution and splitting everything out between non-hazardous, police officers, and firefighters. So we show a breakdown of that for each year, last year and the current year. For non-hazardous, the contribution requirement is $3.5 million this year, $4.7 million for police, and just under $3.4 million for fire, for the total of $11.7 million. On page 2, there was one assumption change made in this report. That a few years ago, the trustees approved slowly reducing the investment return assumption down to 6.5%. And this was the last step this year, going from 6.55 to 6.50. This is the forward-looking expectation, and it's also the rate we use to discount all the liabilities in the plan. That change alone increased the contribution by about $224,000. We also show, we've been showing this for the last few years, what the contribution would be if we were using a previous mortality table prior to 2016. Effective in 2016, the Florida retirement system mortality rates were required to be used. And it is our opinion as the actuaries for the plan that mortality table was not as conservative as the one that had been in place voluntarily by the pension trustees prior to 2016. So we've shown for the last 6 years what the contribution would have been if the old mortality table assumption had been used instead of the required table under FRS. And that amount is $12.4 million versus the $11.7 million that is the required contribution. The experience for the year was very strong. We had a $65.5 million experience gain. That means the unfunded liability, which is actually a surplus right now, the surplus grew by $65.5 million more than it was expected to, assuming all the assumptions were realized. That's mainly driven by investment experience. The investment return on the market value of assets during calendar year 2021 was 12.9%, and on a smooth actuarial value basis, it was 12.46. There were also some offsetting liability gains and losses. We had a lot more terminations of employment than expected, 141 terminations versus 92 expected, based on the assumptions. So the most terminations we've seen in 1 year for this plan since I've been working on it. There were also some salary increases. The average salary increase assumption was 4.24, but the actual salary increases were over 6% for the year, so that created a little bit of a liability loss. If you look at the top of page 3, there is no payment to amortize the unfunded liability. And under Florida statutes, the plan is required to fund at least the normal cost. So the gain took you from being over 100% funded to still over 100% funded. It increased the funded ratio by 6.2%, but it did not reduce the contribution requirement because you were already fully funded, so you're still paying the normal cost, which is required by Florida statutes. The funded ratio of the plan right now is 114.57%. So one of the strongest funded ratios in the entire state, especially for a plan this size with over $1 billion in assets. The Florida retirement system is still in the 80s, around 80, roughly 86% funded, and it will probably be a little less than that now because of the current market conditions. But this plan, even with a market downturn that we're seeing right now in 2022, I think will still be over 100% funded. That's how strong the funded position was as of January 1, 2022. The market value also exceeded the actuarial value, meaning we're smoothing in gains that have happened in recent years. So the market value of assets is $151 million higher than the smooth actuarial value of assets. So that's a very large cushion, almost 12% of the total assets of the fund that are there to absorb a downturn in the market value if it happens. So let's turn to that actuarial value of asset exhibit. It's on page D or C3, just to show you how that smoothing method works. On line E1 of this page, you can see the total market value return for the year was $159.2 million. The assumed return, if the plan had earned the 6.55% assumption, was $80.7 million. So there's an excess return last year of $78.5 million. That is smoothed over a 5-year period at 20% per year. So you look in line F1, we're recognizing $15.7 million of it this year, and down the diagonal through 2025, we'll be recognizing $15.7 million a year. We also have gains in 3 of the past 4 years, 2020, 19, and 17. So the total amount of the gains being smoothed in this year is $57 million, if you add all 5 numbers up. That gets you to an actuarial value of assets of just over $1.2 billion, which is actually less by over $150 million than your market value, which is $1.375 billion. Again, all these numbers are as of January 1, 2022. Page C5 shows the history of investment results. And you can see that over the last 5 years, the average market return has been over 12% a year. Over the last 10 years, almost 10.5% a year. And overall years shown back to 1986 has averaged 9.5% per year. So the plan is in great shape. I think it was in position being over 115% funded. If you look at that on a market value basis, it's over 125% funded. It's in great shape to be able to absorb a downturn in the market. I believe, as we sit here today, on a market value basis, it's probably still at least 100% funded because of the excellent stewardship over the last several years. The plan has a 7% minimum, or the city ordinance has a 7% minimum contribution. So in years that the required contribution has gone below that, a credit balance has been built up. So with that, I'll ask if there are any questions.
I just want to say, I mean, you know, we have a large plan. These aren't questions, they're comments.
Okay.
And this is kind of my business.
Right.
So I am very pleased, obviously, that we're actuarially funded where we are. But our plan has gotten so big that it is the market more than even our contributions that wag the dog.
Right.
And, you know, Vanguard, a very well-respected firm, came out with an anticipated rate of return for the S&P over the next 10 years of 1.5% per annum. Now, I can tell you, the plan will not hold up to that.
No.
And there will be many plans that are in much worse shape, obviously, than ours. But ever since the Great Recession, since 2009 when we had a recovery, and it has pretty much continued unabated, other than 2018, and of course this year, we don't know what that'll bring. But I just think we always need to be very mindful of the fact that past returns are not necessarily indicative of future returns.
Right.
And so we want to be well funded so that we can keep our obligations and not see an enormous hit, obviously, to the plan. So, I mean, I'm thrilled with what we've done, but I still am very cautious.
Yes. And my recommendation would be to keep lowering the 6.5% return assumption because of the forecasts that are out there right now. I had not seen the 1.5% per year forecast for the next 10 years, but we collect forward-looking capital market forecasts over the next 20 years, 15, 20 years, midterm and long-term, from 12 different investment consulting firms, and those forward-looking estimates have come way down from 5, 10 years ago.
And what are they?
Sitting at around, for a portfolio like this one, this asset allocation, sitting around 6%. So, yeah, I would definitely recommend continuing to lower the 6.5% return assumption in future years.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to accept the annual valuation?
Well, you kind of answered my question. I was going to ask over, I mean, it seems like we have an extended downturn in the economy. And I don't know about the 1.5 per, I heard that also over the next 10 years. You're saying that you look more like 6% for the...
That's what the current capital market forecasts are showing for the next like 15 to 20 year horizon. We use mid to long term capital market forecasts, and and we average 12 different investment consulting firms forecasts together, and then we apply it to the asset allocation, for each client, and we've done that for this plan, and it comes out around 6% for kind of a mid to long term forecast for this asset allocation. Now the S&P 500 is just one component of this allocation. Right?
Okay, that was it.
Anything else? Have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the January 1st, 2022 annual actual valuation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
4.4.
Good morning again, trustees. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. On behalf of the Pension Investment Committee, I'd like to briefly review calendar 2021 investment performance for the plan and the plan's 21 money managers. We also have the plan's investment consultant, Mike Vallone with Cap Trust, available for any questions. Wait for the presentation.
There you go.
Overall, it was a good year for investment performance with the plan's 13.33% investment return, well in excess of the actuarial assumption of 6.55%. However, on a relative basis, the performance only placed in the 76th percentile and underperformed the composite benchmark index by 0.76%. We consider this underperformance to be temporary due to overall market conditions that did not favor the investment styles of many of our managers. This is only the second year in the last 10 years that the plan has performed below the 50th percentile, with the plan performing in the 10th percentile last year. We expect performance to rebound and for our money managers as a whole to continue to outperform on a long-term basis. The domestic equity segment of our stock portfolio had an excellent absolute return of 21.97%, but on a relative basis only placed in the 66th percentile, while underperforming the index by 6.74%. We'll review the performance or the underperformance of each individual money manager later in the presentation, but overall this return of 21.97% was very strong. International equity performed well on both an absolute basis with a 13.92% return and on a relative basis, placing in the 35th percentile and exceeding the index by 6.1%. Excellent performance from a sector that has been consistently outperforming for the past 5 years. It was not a good year for fixed income. Though we did slightly outperform the index, the return was a negative 1.4% and placed us in the 71st percentile of public pension plans. However, this sector has outperformed for the last 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year periods, and we expect their strong long-term performance to continue. Real estate had a very good absolute return of 19.39%. The poor relative performance of the 66th percentile and a huge 18.64% below the index is due to our plan's relatively low exposure to REITs versus the heavy weighting of the index. REITs had an extraordinary year with an index return of 46%, though they were a negative 7.9% last year. Very volatile. The plan's overall long-term investment performance continues to be strong on both a relative and an absolute basis, as demonstrated by the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year results. The performance of our large cap growth and value managers is a mixed bag. Absolute returns are very strong for all and very good news. Manning and Napier, a large cap value manager, underperforms significantly on a relative basis, and the investment committee has them on a watch list for possible future action. The other underperforming value manager is our Northern Trust Index Fund, which is actually doing exactly what we hired them for by tracking to the index. Lots of yellow underperformance for this group of mid-cap and small-cap managers, with some very strong absolute returns and a couple not so strong. The overriding theme with these active managers is their emphasis on quality companies and dedication to their investment style. During the past year of strong bull market momentum, investors did not appear to discriminate regarding quality, and the investment styles of these managers were not rewarded appropriately, in our opinion.
Jay?
Yes?
Is everyone clear with what the MCG, MCV, SCG, and everyone understand what all that is? So it's mid-cap growth, mid-cap value, small-cap growth, small-cap value. Just so, and those at home, I don't know that anybody knows what those are.
Thank you. Overall, we continue to monitor the performance of each of these managers closely, but feel that their performance will rebound. The next slide is our international equities. We have 2 basic international managers, TS&W and WCM, and DFA is an emerging markets international manager. International performed well overall with both TS&W and WCM significantly outperforming their peer group and indexes. Our emerging markets manager in yellow placed in the 74th percentile. However, this is misleading because the Wilshire Public Sector Database is for all international, not just emerging markets. A better comparison is how DFA performed versus their index, which they outperformed by over 800 basis points or 8%. Actually a very strong performance year for them also on a relative basis. As I stated earlier, it was not a good year for fixed income. However, on a positive note, both of these managers have placed in the top 50th percentile and outperformed their indexes for the past 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year cumulative periods, and we expect their strong performance to continue. A lot of yellow on this slide, but again, a little misleading. The percentile rankings for real estate are from the Wilshire Public Sector Universe of all real estate managers, which earlier I mentioned includes a heavy weighting of REITs, which had such an outstanding year. This is evident in green above with our REIT manager Security Capital realizing a 45% return for the year. But the other core and core plus managers also had excellent returns of 18 to 20%. Timber continues to struggle, but there is actually cause for optimism. The combination of increased demand from sawmills constructed in response to supply shortages, overall timber demand, and significant new income from the sale of carbon credits, all are contributing to expectations of significant improvements in timber returns going forward. Finally, our infrastructure manager, IFM Infrastructure, provided an excellent return of 17.75%. Again, a poor percentile ranking is due to being compared against the overall real estate index that includes REITs. A recap of money manager changes during 2021 includes the termination of Voya Investment Management, a large cap growth manager that played a significant role in the plan's excellent investment performance for more than 30 years. The allocation was transferred to our Northern Trust Large Cap Growth Index Fund. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Ravens? Councilmember Allred.
So you mentioned that the performance was going to rebound. And on the last presentation I heard that we were pretty much locked in at low performance. So how do you figure that?
We're talking relative performance versus absolute. I mean, the market is not doing well, but what I'm talking about is how our managers perform versus their peers on a relative basis.
Okay.
So even though we may have a negative return for the year, we look at, did our managers still outperform the other managers?
Yes.
Was that negative return less than what it would have been on average? Yeah.
It's good to see. I'm not a money manager, but I have been in construction. It's good to hear there's an uptick on the timber returns. So
it's long overdue for our timber investments.
That's it.
Other questions? So I think for first cap, I've got some questions. What are we paying you?
Our fee is, I believe it's $120,000 roughly.
Okay. What is your forecast for returns over the next 10 years?
Well, we're a little bit more bullish than Vanguard, but we
I think
certainly...
everybody is, but...
Yeah, but we certainly expect, at least looking over the next half decade, we'll probably be looking at around 5 to 6%. And that's just because of the strong returns we've had over the previous 10 years, where there's going to be a little bit to give back. But we think once we kind of get past this difficult environment that we're going through right now, we've already had a fairly decent-sized correction in the market so far this year. Some of that will start to get baked in the cake in and then we can start to see higher returns, more than 7% long-term, kind of once we get to the back half of this year. That's for equities.
Going to some more passive investments, what's your viewpoint on passive versus active in this type of market?
So generally, for most asset classes, we favor active. The managers that are used in this portfolio are very high-quality managers, and that's some of the reason for the underperformance that you saw up there. Over the past 2 years, especially coming out of the pandemic, a lot of speculative, low-quality stocks have done extremely well. They're owned by the index, not necessarily owned by our managers. And when I say low quality, I'm talking about companies that don't have earnings, don't have cash flows, don't have strong balance sheets. They've done really well. We try to avoid those because of what has happened over the past few months. A lot of those stocks have been halved or even worse. So our managers have had a little bit of a difficult time, but we would expect kind of moving through this year, as there's more of a focus on high quality stocks, they tend to do well. Now when it comes to indexing, we're primarily active, but there are some parts of the portfolio that we like to index. Large cap being one of them. Large cap growth, we're very comfortable indexing, as the index has generally performed in the 30th percentile or better over the long term. It's just a very difficult asset class for active managers to beat after they pay their fees. So we do a mix, but we do prefer active.
And the REITs, what is our mix there? I mean, that's a very long street.
Yes. So we're primarily private real estate versus the REIT, which is the index. So the REITs are publicly traded, very volatile. When we went into the pandemic, they were down about 40%. So they got hit really hard. The investments in this portfolio did not. The returns tend to be more smooth. So they might have been down mid-single digits. But as REITs rebounded very strongly over the past year, they were up 40%, getting back a lot of what they lost. Our private managers did not keep up either, and they were up around 10%. So they just tend to have more of a smooth return stream than publicly traded REITs.
And what are your thoughts on alts?
So, alts have, up until this year, you've been much better off just owning stocks and bonds over the past 10 years. It's been cheaper, you have no liquidity issues, and the returns have been really strong. We think alts are probably going to play a bigger role going forward as returns from the stock market are going to be a little bit more muted than what we've experienced. So, we're hoping that part of the portfolio can start to perform well. And not just alts, but I'll throw in fixed income too. We haven't gotten much out of fixed income over the past 5 years or so. As yields start to creep back up, hopefully that part of the portfolio will help to, help with overall returns.
Do you think our allocation is correct?
I think so, yes. Yes, I think it's conservative, it's safe, I think it makes a lot of sense, diversified.
Any other questions or comments, Vice Mayor?
What are the alts? Can you explain that?
Alternative investments.
Alternative investments, so.
You have stocks, bonds, and.
Yes.
Give me an example of the alternative investments.
So stocks and bonds are your traditional investments, and then anything outside of that we would generally consider alternatives. Real estate, everything else in the portfolio besides the stocks and bonds.
Long, short funds.
Hedge funds, which we don't utilize, the infrastructure, timber, everything that falls underneath that.
Managed futures. I mean, there's a lot of alternatives.
A lot, yes.
And they tend not to be correlated to the rest of the market.
Yes,
So,
that's the hope.
I have a motion to approve.
Move to approve agenda item 4.4.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Ravens. 4.5. And he's back.
This item is requesting the trustees' determination of an expected rate of return for pension plan investments for the current year, each of the next several years, and for the long term thereafter, in accordance with Florida statutes. When I drafted this agenda item a month or so ago, I defaulted to our actuarial assumption rate, current rate of 6.5% for the expected rate of return for all time periods. Given where we are year to date, I think my recommendation for the current year might be something significantly more conservative, like 0% or even a negative return. But ultimately, that's the trustee's determination.
Questions?
So you're going from a 6% to a 0 rate of return?
I'm saying the trustees need to go on the record with what your determination is of what you think the market is going to return for the current year. Currently, we're down probably 13 to 14% year-to-date in the portfolio overall. It's going to have to rebound significantly to hit that 6.5% assumption by the end of this current calendar year. Can it happen? Absolutely. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, and I know the trustees don't have a crystal ball. I was just throwing that out there that given where we are year-to-date and nearing halfway through the year, it might make sense to have a little more conservative of an estimate for the current year.
Well, I don't anticipate that we're gonna have a positive return this year. If we got back to 0, I'd be astounded. With what's going on with the Federal Reserve, inflation, geopolitical issues around the globe. I think a 0 return expectation would be optimistic. So this is where that reserve comes in, and we'll be utilizing it for bumpy times like this. But I'd be surprised if we get back to just being down 4. That's
Down 4?
That's kind of our expectations. But you might as well pull out a dartboard and start throwing them. But if we want to have a pool on this, each put in a buck. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. The Times is in the room. That was just a joke, Mrs. McManus. So I think we ought to lower it to at least 0. Not that it matters. It will be what it will be. Is that acceptable?
Just for the current year, and then leave it at 6.5 for the.
Yes, I mean,
for the future.
my crystal ball is broken.
Yeah.
So do you want me to make a motion?
Yes, I don't remember ever doing this before.
It's been an annual requirement for a number of years now. It really came
We
about.
did this last year?
Yes, we've done it every year. It came about back when a lot of plans had high assumption rates of 8.5%, and markets were not anywhere near that, and folks are hesitant to lower the assumption because it costs money and makes the plan more expensive. So people were looking the other way and not following their actuary's guidance to lower it. As you heard today, our actuary feels we should continue to lower it to 6%. So the legislature passed this just to make trustees a little more accountable for the fact that you have to go on the record each year with what those estimates are and whether they're consistent with the actuarial assumption.
And I'd like to hear from our actuary and our investment consultant on what they think the number ought to be.
Usually, again, Pete Strong, GRS, usually the state likes to see a match between what you're assuming in your actuarial evaluation report and what you certify as your expected forward-looking expectation. But I think that the long-term thereafter number is the main number. The midterm and long-term thereafter is what really needs to tie to your evaluation report. In an extreme year, you could say we expect to not have a good return this year, but for the long term, we expect to hit our actuarial return number. You know, if you do something different than what's in your actuarial evaluation report, then the state will probably come back and question that. I've never seen a board or a group of trustees submit a forward-looking expectation that is different than their actuarial assumption, because that, I think, will cause concerns from the state. Well, if you're certifying you expect this number, then why why is your actuarial evaluation report not reflecting that? So, but I think in an extreme
We're
year,
asking for a single year number,
a single year number,
are we not?
I don't, no, it's for the midterm and long term. There's three components to this letter. The next year, the midterm, and the long term thereafter. There's three different numbers there that go into this letter. So if you're expecting a 0% return this year, I think you could say that, but then for the midterm and long term, I think those need to match what's in your evaluation report.
Which I think is what we're saying. At least I'd be comfortable with that, but not this year.
Okay.
This was great legislation.
So you're saying we did, the council did this last year?
I do not recall this. I
Do
mean,
you have that number?
Jay is saying that we did.
Yes,
so I
we've
believe
done it
we're
every
right.
year for probably the last 8 to 10 years, I would guess.
So what was last year's number?
It was the actuarial assumption at that time was 6.55%.
Well, I think we can say that we'll meet the 6.5 over the mid to longer term. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Sure, do you want me to state it? That,
That you can just say,
okay,
moved.
move to approve agenda item 4.5?
Second.
All in favor?
So just to be clear, it's 0% for this year, and then
6.5 in the long.
Long term.
just want to make it clear.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Anything else for the pension trustees? We're adjourned. We'll reconvene the work session. Item 2.1.
Annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2021.
Good morning, Monica Mitchell, Assistant Finance Director. This agenda item is for the presentation of the city's annual audit for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2021. First, I would like to thank the members of the audit team. We have a small army of controllers, accountants, and other support staff that contribute to this process in the finance department as well as other departments throughout the city. But regardless of who they report to, whenever there's an audit request, they make it a priority, and that's what keeps this process moving toward a timely completion. The Auditor Selection Committee, chaired by Mayor Hibbard, met last month and had the opportunity to preview this presentation and ask questions. Now I would like to turn the presentation over to David Alvarez, Partner in Charge from CRA and Interim.
Thanks again for having me. I think it's clear there was a groundswell based on my first presentation. I realized fill up the room, there's going to be another audit presentation a little bit later. So I want to reiterate what Monica said about the effort that goes into this process. I will keep my presentation very short, but there's a significant amount of work, primarily by your staff and amongst our team to complete the audit process. Again, this is the September 30, 2021 annual comprehensive financial report for the city of Clearwater. A lot of the same reports that you'll see here as in the CRA financial statements, but here we also had an unmodified opinion on the fair presentation of the city's financial statements. One thing the city of Clearwater does a little bit differently than most governments is you do ask your auditors to opine on every fund within the city's financial statements. You go above and beyond of what government auditing standards would require. So we do opine on all funds, not just those that are determined to be major funds by accounting standards. So then we also issue a government auditing standards report. Also, we had no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies within internal controls in relation to financial reporting at the citywide level. One report here that you don't get in the CRA is what's called the single audit report. In non-federal entities, if you expend more than $750,000 of federal funds or state funds, state of Florida has their own single audit rule. Very few other states have single audit rules, but the state of Florida does. So we audit, we go through the process of identifying which of those grant programs are determined to be major, and there's a formal process you go through in accordance with audit standards to determine, and then we do deep dives on major programs. Presented on this slide are what the major programs and projects were for the federal single audit and the state single audit. This process is very time consuming. The single audit portion, compliance gets very detailed in accordance with federal and state rules, and then specifics in each individual contract. So we go real deep on single audit testing. We gave a clean opinion on the single audit. So we test both compliance and then internal controls around compliance. We then get to the management letter. Again, this is a letter that requires a bunch of different responses. We would communicate here any kind of outliers. The one thing to communicate, and it kind of came out of the single audit process, is there was immaterial non-compliance in relation to formal approval of reporting. So what that means is, as a part of the single audit process, there's a lot of reporting that's required. So quarterly reports, annual reports, status reports. So we're testing both compliance, so both that all numbers included in those reports are accurate and timely, but then we're also testing controls. So did someone else initial that report, even if everything else is correct? So we had some issues around the initialing of a report. We found there to be compensating controls in place, and we had no issues with compliance. So we had deemed those to be immaterial, but it shows up in the management letter as an area of possible improvement. The pandemic related funding brought a bunch of new reports, so that this is not an uncommon sort of finding amongst governments. As more reporting is filed electronically, it gets a little tricky of how do you document that it was approved by somebody else when someone's logging into a computer and filing it. Again, an immaterial non-compliance. Local government investment policies report. Again, we test that this city has an investment policy in accordance with Florida statute, and the city has followed that policy. One thing that's in there is that it does require those that are responsible for the investment program to get 8 hours of CPE each year, something that Florida statute requires. So we look at the CPE records for Jay each year. So general audit results, there were no audit adjustments that were recorded in your financial statements based on our audit procedures, which is always good. And there was one new accounting standard. So accounting standard GASB 84, which is in relation to fiduciary activities. The impact for the city is there used to be a term, agency funds. So those funds that the city collects and distributes on an agency perspective. The terminology has changed. They're now called custodial funds. You now have a full, I'm going to just use regular terms that all of us will understand. We'll have a full balance sheet and income statement for those now custodial funds, more in the front of the financial statements. For certain governments, it was a massive change of what was agency, what was become a regular part of the government. For the city of Clearwater, it changed where it shows up in the financials, but really a minimal impact. But it was a new accounting standard. Because this accounting standard was required to be reported, it did require a restatement of opening net position for the fiduciary funds because of now how it is being presented. Other communications. So this last list, this is a list of things that are required by auditors to be made to those charged with governance. So I'll go real quickly through this standard list. The significant accounting policies are laid out in footnote 1 to your financial statements. There were, other than the implementation of that new standard around fiduciary activities, there were no significant accounting policies. The financial statements are prepared using accounting estimates. You guys just had a discussion about an accounting estimate in relation to your pension plan, but there are other accounting estimates included. With the most significant of those accounting estimates being an allowance for doubtful accounts in relation to receivables, risk management accruals, again, the pension plan, also the other post-employment benefit plan, and useful lives of capital assets. There were no significant difficulties encountered during the audit. We didn't have any disagreements with management. There were no issues discussed prior to our retention. Something we have to say that basically means is, do we think Jay and Monica were asking someone else's permission? When Dad said no, does Mom say it's fine? We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants, and there were no other internal control deficiencies that were identified during our audits. So unless there's any questions, this is the last you'll hear of me until next year.
Any questions? I just want to thank Monica and Jay. We really do have a remarkable staff. I think CRA's done a great job. They went through an RFP process, and so they're newer. I'm very happy with them, and I also want to thank the other audit committee members who are citizens. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. 2.2.
Designate an underwriting team consisting of Bank of America Securities and JP Morgan Securities LLC, Raymond James Associates, RBC Capital Markets LLC, and Wells Fargo Securities to provide investment banking services to manage future negotiated bond sales for the city.
Good morning, Monica Mitchell, Assistant Finance Director. Resolution 2211 establishes an underwriting team to provide investment banking services to manage future negotiated bond sales. We chose 5 firms from 12 responses received. In the event the city has a negotiated bond sale in the next 5 years, any or all of these firms may be called upon to manage the sale. Typically, one firm would serve as a lead underwriter or a senior manager, and any other firms chosen to assist would be designated as co-managers. Any questions?
Questions? Vice Mayor?
So I'm learning. Obviously, they'd all look at the same information, right? If they're giving us advice on managing or distributing these $30 million in bonds, right?
Okay. Are you referring to Imagine Clearwater?
Yeah.
Okay, Imagine Clearwater will not be a negotiated bond sale. It will be a competitive bond sale, so this team won't come into play with Imagine Clearwater.
Okay, that helps a little bit. And then, how do these firms get paid? These managers, is it based?
They take a cut of the proceeds.
Okay. And then what if they're not all in consensus with a recommendation? How does that work?
Well, when we go to have a negotiated bond sale, we would choose 1, maybe 2 or 3 to manage the sale for us. And we tell them what return we want to see, and it's their job to go market it for that. And most of the time, if they can't sell a bond for the return we want to receive, a lot of times they'll purchase it themselves and keep it in inventory for a later date. With Imagine Clearwater, it'll be a competitive bond issue, and any underwriter will be able to bid on this bond issue. We won't have pre-selected them.
Thank you.
But they go out to their customers and offer them what they're offering.
Okay.
So, one of the firms is Raymond James. The city attorney and I have talked about that, and I have no conflicts, so I do not need to recuse myself on it. Any questions further? All right, we'll discuss that on Thursday. Thank you, Monica. 3.1.
Authorize a purchase order to Odometer DPG LLC for natural gas distribution maintenance service line locating services.
Good morning, Council. Alex Leon, Engineering Manager for Clearwater Gas. I'm looking for acceptance or actual approval for this bid package for locating services to locate our lines during construction activities as well as other utilities.
Any questions? Consent?
Yeah.
3.2.
Accept the gas utility easement from Bellevue Biltmore Country Club Corp. with construction, installation, maintenance of gas utility facilities on real property located at 1 Country Club Lane, Bel Air.
This item is for easement that we're required to do for upland construction upgrades that the Bellevue Country Club is doing. This will allow us to get our line out of the way for planned upgrades.
The only question I have on this is not the Bellevue Biltmore. In the agenda item, it says Bellevue Biltmore. And then in the introduction, it's Bel-Air Country Club.
Right. My understanding is that easement is with the Bellevue Country Club. I mean, Bellevue Biltmore Country Club.
But it isn't. That's Bel-Air Country Club. I mean, looking at the map, I'm a member. The Bellevue used to be the Pelican for a while, which is down on Indian Rocks and Poinsettia. But this is Bel-Air, so Mr. City Attorney, I don't know if in the original deeds, Bel-Air Country Club was owned by the Biltmore, which was adjacent, but as I see this, it's just not the right title. I don't know if it matters.
Understood. I'll check with Ms. Mahoney on that.
Okay.
I'll double check as well.
Just want to make sure we don't cause an issue. Anything else? Any reason this can't go on consent? That's what I thought. Okay, consent?
Yes.
Barring some name change that needs to occur. All right, 3.3.
Thank you.
Approve an increase in purchase order to Geosenta Consultants, Inc. for supplemental site work and project management at the former manufactured gas plant site located at 7 Maple Street.
Good morning, Brian Langill, Assistant Director for Clearwater Gas System. This is a request from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection that they want us to install 3 new monitoring wells at our site located at the gas plant site, which was the location of the former manufactured gas plant site where we used to create the gas on site way back in the 1920s through the 1950s. And so Geosenta, which is an engineer of record, has proposed to do that along testing all the other wells that we have on our site. We have 35 existing wells as well. In the proposal, they will submit a report to the FDEP with their findings. In addition to that, they propose to write reports, a site environmental management plan, and a remedial action plan to get site closure ultimately on the site. That way we can put deep restrictions and restrictive covenants on the property, just to make sure that nobody digs or does things that they can't do on the property. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Vice Mayor.
So this is to install 3 additional groundwater monitoring wells, okay? And we're gonna monitor the land that our new Clearwater gas building is on, right? And then, do we have cause to be concerned with the field monitoring so far? Like, why are they asking us to do 3 more, is my question.
Well, I think after the site redevelopment that we had at our complex over the last few years, some of the wells were abandoned in place because of the construction. So we did add some last year or year before because of that. So we're seeing that where they just want to get a little bit more data around the perimeter. Some of these 3 new wells are actually not on our property. They're in the right-of-way adjacent to it and on the other side of the street. So they're just wanting a little bit more data before we go to that next phase of writing those reports and getting that remedial action plan and the final site closure on the site.
So, I have a question. How frequently is the monitoring sampling done? And have there been some troubling reports so far or anything? Is everything like the way it should be?
Well, there's a lot of monitoring that's been done over the years. I mean, we've been doing this for over 25 years, actually, since the early to mid-90s. And we're just now getting to that point where we've fully identified where the contaminants are in the ground and where, we want to make sure that they're not migrating or moving or having any other impact off-site. So we want to make sure that we can contain it within the property. And we've just had, everything north of the property is perfectly fine and south, and we do have a little bit of issues that migrate over to the Pinellas County Health Department site, where we have to have some type of procedure in place to mitigate that in long term. But we've done sampling for the past 25 years on the site. And so there are, higher readings on the site in certain areas that are associated with the manufactured gas plant contaminants. But the data doesn't show that it's migrating off-site other than that one little area that I mentioned.
And can the public access these reports?
Yeah, it's all over public record, of course.
And the frequency of the monitoring sampling is how frequently?
Typically, it's when the DEP requests it, so that might happen once every couple of years, 2 or 3 years. We have a lot of historical data on the site, going back to, like I said, the mid-90s. And so there have been some years where we haven't done any activity on the site. Sometimes we might go 3 or 4 years without having a request from them to do that monitoring or give results. But typically every few years we're doing analysis.
It costs money to do sampling?
Yes, so this is all part of that, the cost right here in this proposal. You can see here, I have the breakdown of the different costs for each component task that they're going to be doing. So yes, it would cost, money every time that we do this.
Okay. I just, obviously we want to keep people safe and keep any contaminants contained. And so this money is for 3 wells, but, do you have just a ballpark figure, like how much does it cost to do? So now we're going to have 30-some different sites, 35, 36, we'll have 38 sites. And, does it cost like $2,000 per site to do an annual test, or,
Well, in this groundwater sampling is $22,200 to do all the sampling of the wells for this one proposal to go across the whole entire site.
So $22,000 per year to do the samplings?
Well, we don't have to do it per year, it's upon the request of the FDEP. So it's not necessarily we spend that much money. But that's approximately what it would cost when we need to do it.
Okay. And if we have a certain part of the perimeter that's concerning with the health department, or the Pinellas Health site, can we just monitor that perimeter a little more frequently? Like, can we monitor on our own, or are we solely waiting for the state to tell us you need to do some monitoring now?
Well, we can sample our wells whenever we want to. We typically, though, work with the FDEP on that sampling cycle, though. That's typically been our past experience with it.
We're following the requirements.
Okay.
Yes, we are following the requirements. So anything, in the future here, those reports will be obviously presented back to council for approval as well in the future.
Okay, thank you very much.
Other questions? Consent?
Yeah.
4.1.
Approve the selection committee's recommendation to the venue management operator RFQ and authorize city staff to engage in negotiations with Global Spectrum LP doing business as OVG 360 in Philadelphia for the purpose of establishing an operating agreement for the Magical Garage Performance Amphitheater.
Morning, Mayor, Council. Jim Howland, Director of Parks and Recreation. In March of this year, the city released RFQ number 18-22 for qualifications for a venue management operator for the Coachman Park Amphitheater. Subsequently, the city received 3 bids: Just Imagine LLC, Oakview Group 360 in partnership with Vinnick Sports Group, and Ruth Eckert Hall. The committee shortlisted 2 finalists, Oakview Group 360 and VSG, and Ruth Eckert Hall. So those are the 2 finalists that we had our interviews with. The committee focused on 4 particular areas when making our evaluation and subsequent recommendation to council. Those areas are experience running and programming venues of similar size and scope, being able to operate the venue requiring as minimal a subsidy as possible from the city while at the same time providing a world-class entertainment experience for those attending the event. Also experience in operating an open venue and having industry-wide relationships to put on a wide variety of shows and events that appeal to a diverse market segment, both socially and economically. And also having the ability to work with our existing events to maintain the quality of those historic events that we've had here throughout the years in the city of Clearwater. These were 2 very qualified candidates that we had, one of which, Ruth Eckert Hall, has a deep and valued partnership and relationship with the city. When factoring the criteria listed above and taking into consideration that having two strong industry groups working with each other along with the city, it could be an opportunity for further growth of live entertainment in the city of Clearwater. So that being said, the committee recommended consideration of Oakview Group 360 and the Vinnick Sports Group for venue management operator. And we have representatives from Oakview Group 360 and the Vinnick Sports Group. So right now I'd like to turn it over to Steve Griggs, the CEO of the Vinnick Sports Group, to walk you through his presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. Thanks for having us, Council. Thanks for having us. It's much easier to come up and present too after you've won a series in Toronto and you can come here on a Monday and present. So we're so excited to be a part of this project, and I have Peter Luco with us here from OVG, chair of OVG. I am the CEO of Vinnick Sports Group, as well as the Tampa Bay Lightning. I've been in Florida for the last 15 years. Partnered with the City of Orlando when I was with the Orlando Magic. We did the Amway Center there for 3 years, and I've been with Vinnick, Jeff Vinnick and OVG, or Vinnick Sports Group since 2010. And so we're proud to be here. I'm with some of my colleagues, Angela Lanza and Kelly Yellowshan, look after the booking and marketing of our buildings, as well as Kevin Priest, who is our Chief Venue Officer for all the venues that we run here in the Tampa Bay area. So with that, that's the introduction on our side. I'll pass it to Peter.
Hi, good morning. I'm Peter Luco. I'm co-chair of OVG 360. With me today is Doug Higgins. He's our VP of Operations, and Sims Hines, our VP of Development. We have some slides.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Next one, please. Oh, push this. Not good with remote control either.
I got it.
All right. We'll give it a finger. Here's our introduction. Who are we? Who is OVG? We are the largest developer of sports and entertainment facilities in the world. We have some $5 billion in capital invested in venues. And what's interesting about that is that every venue that we're investing in is going to be owned by a city, a county, or a state. So we invest the money in facilities, but they're owned publicly. And I think that's very important because at the end of the day, we assimilate into the community. We think that's very, very important. We become part of the community, we're operators, we're bookers, we're not promoters. We always run our facilities open to booking and work with the local community to bring in events and make the facility successful. We're 5,000 employees, 8,900 live events, 234 venues. We're some 6 years old and we've grown tremendously in that period of time. We really believe in this marketplace and having such great partners in Vinnick Sports Group. We see that there's a void here in this marketplace for this type of venue and also this capacity. Very, very exciting for us.
And with our team, Vinnick Sports Group, as you know, we came in with Jeff Vinnick back in 2010, and it was about transformation. It was about transformation of the lighting brand, transformation of the Emily Arena at that time was the St. Pete Times Forum, and really was working in partnership and building that relationship with the city as well as the county, working with Mike Merrill and the county commissioners, as well as at that point in time Bob Buckborn and the council there, to transform that building there and what it is today with Emily Arena, and obviously the transformation of our hockey team as well. It allowed us then to build an incredible arena experience that you now see at Emily Arena. And with that, the fan experience, the guest experience was number one priority of Jeff Vinnick, as well as the commitment to the community. With that, that's allowed us to grow and build our business, which is now VSG Live, which is overseeing the Yuengling Center, which is at the USF, which was the USF Sundome. Judy Ginshaft said, I want to have the same fan experience, the same commitment to the community that you guys have in that building there. So therefore, back in 2015, we were able to take over that building. We took over their MMR rights as well as telling all the sponsorship. And since then, too, we've also taken over Raymond James from a ticketing perspective as well, doing all of the box office and ticketing promotion there. So for us, we've spent time transforming our building, building relationships, working in the community, and building a regional powerhouse when it comes to ticketing and selling events, and most importantly, having an amazing fan and guest experience in both of the buildings that we run. Like I said, it's really been a focus on our core values of how we take care of our team, both on and off the ice, but more importantly, how we take care of our fan experience. And so for us, like we said, we've built this brand about being a world-class organization and how we treat our fans. So from the time you walk onto the plaza at Emily Arena, to the ushers, the ticket takers, the food and beverage experience, the retail, all of that, the fan experience in our building has been second to none. That's really what it sets us apart, as well as how we take care of our promoters and as well as our artists that come into our building. It's a number one experience. And then most importantly is about our commitments back to the community. So we all know what Jeff Vinnick has done for this community. It's our number one value as what we do in this community. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but our commitments to the community and our relationship with the community has allowed us to continue to grow our business and build something pretty special here in the Tampa Bay region. And why you ask why we're working with OBG? We've been partners for a long time. We've been friends for a long time. So we work with them on the Arena Alliance, some of our sponsorship opportunities, but they are a true partner in our building. They are a national powerhouse when it comes to operating venues, and we're a regional powerhouse when it comes to operating venues. And so we feel we have a full package here. They have a food and beverage program. We know how to sell tickets. We have a great database. We know how to. We have a marketing program. We have all the key pieces in place. Our guest and fan experience, like we talked about before. But most importantly, we talk about our commitment to the community and our commitment to community events. When you come to Emily Arena, we have over 30 events that are not even seen on the books, which is all about doing community walks, building bikes in our arena with on bikes. We're working with Titus O'Neill and doing backpacks and the blessings. So all of those different types of things that we do inside our venue is some of the most important things that we do, and that's what creates the relationship that we have with the community, not only in Hillsborough, but in Pinellas and Pasco. So
I think when you look at the partnership, you see the combination of our two companies. One, our ability to invest. We want skin in the game. We take operating risk. We participate. One of our partners, Irving Azoff, also happens to be one of the most powerful managers in music. So we have a manager behind us. Even though we don't promote per se, he controls many of these acts and will work with any local promoter that we can bring to the party here. I just think long term, we really can benefit the city of Clearwater in this venue. We can invest, we can make changes, we can put skin in the game, and I think that's what's so important. And we've been partners for 4 years in the Arena Alliance. So you got a good combination here of people that are local and also have, I think, the national power.
And when you talk about partnering with major event promoters, it is the AGs of the world, it is the Live Nations, it's the Felds, it's the Outbacks, it's the Messina Group. We have an open venue in both Yuengling Center as well as Emily Arena. So Emily Arena is one of the top 5 buildings in North America right now when you talk about the number of concerts and events in our building. And Yuengling Center is the #1 venue in the Southeast region now because we have created that open room and partnered with all of these different promoters. And we know how to sell tickets. We have the database. We have the marketing power behind all of our different venues in order to push tickets and make sure that we got full buildings every time we have an event.
And our 234 venues are all open. We have no exclusivities anywhere in the country. Just so you can look at a couple of our projects, I think this is very interesting. One of them being UBS Arena at Belmont, $1 billion facility. We're partners with the New York Islanders. We're partners with the Seattle Kraken in the arena, Climate Pledge Arena there. What's interesting in Seattle is it's going to be the first carbon neutral arena in the history of this business. So we're committed to sustainability, inclusion, and protecting our environment. Yuengling Center in Tampa is something that these guys are very, very involved in. We're very involved in a music center in Virginia Beach that is going to be built rather soon. We just opened a brand new arena in Savannah, Georgia. So we're investing equity, and we're investing in these marketplaces, and again, having a great partner, we feel we can really do something special here.
And we've done it both in Emily and Yuengling. You know, with Emily back in 2010 when we came here, the building was, in disrepair. The thermostats weren't working. The seats were rusting off the seats, and Jeff Vinnick knew that at that point in time he had to invest in a publicly owned building in order to make sure we had the right products and services to create that amazing fan experience that you now see in our arena there.
Resources. We have a lot of resources at our company. We have various divisions, so we have people that specialize in parking, and that'll be an issue here, obviously, that we'll have to deal with and make right. We have venue financing solutions. We have Preventive Partners, our security division, that can do team audits, that can look at the security situation and build a proper facility that the public will want to come to. Procurement, on and on and on. So not only do you have the operations of OVG 360, but we have other resources behind us to support the facility.
So with all that being said, we have a true, clear vision on how we try to manage events throughout all our facilities. Our first goal is to have the most diverse event mix we can possibly have to serve all of our community. And as Tampa Bay becomes the 10th largest market in the country, we're getting more diverse, we're getting younger, and we have more spending dollars available for disposable income, and we're trying to create even more access to things that enrich our community and bring people into our place, whether they're snowbirds, whether they're recent transplants elevating our stuff, or they're the incumbents that have been here for quite some time. We've got an extremely diverse audience that we can sell to, so having a mixture of local events, community events, and national touring acts is the perfect fabric of an event mix that will serve the entire community. With that being said, all of those different things, and Steve referenced with us getting involved with Raymond James and helping with our database, Amalie, Yingling, and the other things that we do throughout the community through walks and runs and different things along those lines. I think On Bikes was mentioned. All of those things add to our database so we can make sure that we create awareness for everybody in our community about opportunities that we have for entertainment, which is key, right? If you don't know about it, you won't go, and if you find out about it, through Facebook or Instagram the next day and you missed it, you've missed it. So you can't go back and do that. But we also look at the shared use with our community. We're really excited about this project, and as we were walking the site space with Jim and Chris, I just have this vision of having this amazing thing happening on our amphitheater stage as you're watching the sunset over the Intercoastal. I mean, how much more of a picturesque thing. Talk about storytelling. Those are the things that people will share for the rest of their lives, and we will definitely earn some social media clout there. But going back to, the way that this is laid out, what the amphitheater provides is a diversity of different things that we can put in there, tie the park space into it, tie the waterways into it, and do just amazing things across that speak to everybody in our community.
Who wants this slide?
Yeah.
Well,
I think, listen, as a company, total commitment to the community. We're members of the community, we'll have a strong relationship with everybody in the community. And we just really, and I can't say this enough, we assimilate into the community. This venue is a community venue. We want to invest, we want to take operating risk. But at the same time, we, as Kevin mentioned, we want diverse community events. Okay, it's very important that we bring things for all people. And we'll put the money behind it. We'll co-promote with local promoters. We'll work very closely with the community themselves. There'll be a number of free events. We think that's very, very important. We'll have certain community days where if we're successful with our other events, it will give us the ability to afford the community the opportunity to use this venue in a free manner. Everywhere we go, we have a number of free community events. We work around that. Again, this is for everybody, and that's our commitment as a partnership.
And I think from a local level, I think everyone knows the reputation of Jeff Vinnick and everyone that works at the Tampa Bay Lighting, that there's a commitment to the community. It has been the day we arrived here. Whether it's the Community Hero Program, which has gone over $25 million over the last 11 years. 5.8 of it has been pushed into to great community efforts in Pinellas County, people doing God's work in Pinellas County. We've rewarded them at hockey games. But we're not just involved, we don't just do the Community Hero Program. We're involved in all the COVID relief programs, DEI initiatives, arts and entertainment, education. Jeff Vinnick and our organization has spent millions and millions of dollars giving back to the community in all of those different things. We've done 1,000 schools already. Will be announced this week with our community hockey program. We've built 10 outdoor rinks throughout the community, 2 of them being in Pinellas County. Just before COVID, we did the George Strait concert out there on the beach there for stage 4 cancer survivors, working with our military. And of course, there's just many more charitable events. I have to see Chicha Rodriguez, but there's so many more that you don't even hear about. But the commitment from our organization, the commitment from Jeff Vinnick and his family to Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, Tampa, and Clearwater, it's unprecedented from an owner in pro sports.
Mr. Griggs, can you get us a list of that 1.6 million spent in
Absolutely.
Clearwater by Thursday?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So the RFQ specifically referenced how do we offset the baby boomer generation and different things like that. So this was addressed directly in here, one, because it was mentioned specifically. One of the things that we've embraced, one is the baby boomer generation, more disposable income, plenty of free time to do stuff. We actually had 9 concerts in Emily over the month of April, and 5 of them were baby boomer acts. Those are 15 to 16,000 seat venues. The next step in their career, their evolution, is probably about a 9,000 seat amphitheater right on the water here in Clearwater, right? So as they come off the bell curve and stuff like that. So there's a lot of opportunities to do things there. But the key is to have, and I'm going to go back to this because this is our song, is diversity of events. There's a lot of different things that different people want to go to, whether they're boomers or not. If they want to be there, we want to make sure that they have the awareness and the opportunity to participate with us.
This venue capacity is right in the wheelhouse of what we're seeing now. We're touring at 5,000 to 9,000 seats. There is no such thing as a record deal anymore, so in order for an act to make any money, they have to tour. And coming out of this pandemic, it's the next 10 years are going to be incredible for touring in our business. So, and within that capacity, there seems to be a lot of acts in that runway. So we're very excited about it. As we've said earlier, you can see the number of promoters that we do work with. We work with everybody. It's very, very important for us to do that. Also, family shows. I think family shows play a big part of this. We'll look to book family shows in this facility. So it's just not all about the music. It's other types of events within a marketplace. We have the relationships. We have the people. We have 8 bookers in our company also go along with the fine booking staff here. So there'll be a lot of support here for this venue.
So we talk about programming and event creation. Our goal here is for us to focus locally on what we want to bring to the Tampa Bay community, and then work nationally with our friends at OVG 360 to be in that routing. So the things that are happening in Virginia Beach, things that are happening in West Palm, the different things to make sure that we're at the forefront as tours are getting routed, that Clearwater's part of the conversation. As we do that, we can take those events, those national events that come through that create hopefully a larger number of dollars that come into the amphitheater, and repurpose some of those profits into farmers markets, different things that activate this space for our community, as well as incorporate all of the legacy events that have been hosted at Coachman Park for years. Summer Splash was just one of the ones that happened. It got displaced due to the construction. Bringing that back in and making that one of its fixed franchises throughout the course of the year. Our goal is to make sure that this area is programmed appropriately for all the different people in the community, but also making it where the park is still sustainable for moms and dads that want to take their kids to the splash pad or go to the park, things along those lines. But taking all of those things, working with the orchestra and creating opportunities to do things that are a little bit more cultural. It's not always just music. It might be comedy festivals. It might be spoken word. It might be a lot of different things that add to the different things that people are looking at from an entertainment aspect. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Summer Splash?
it's a radio festival show.
You mean Wild
Wild
Splash?
Splash, sorry.
Okay, and it's the Florida Orchestra, not the symphony.
Yes.
So on the Florida Orchestra point, so as we empower our managers on site to be entrepreneurs, I think we talked about, obviously, we believe in music, but we also believe in the community events that we can be there. We met with Mark and the Florida Orchestra about a month ago, really brainstorming ideas. He said, you know what, it'd be really great to have this site for the Clearwater, to have spring training for world-renowned orchestras across the world. And we invite them all here in their down period, which would be February, March, and really just have a spectacular week or 2 weeks of spring training for Florida Orchestra. That's one of our commitments that, should we move forward, that we'll start right away. And then as I said, we're really going to be aggressive to be sure that we're creative, and we're working directly with you in the community to feature all events that people want to come to.
Listen, I think it's why work with OVG and VSG. It's a financial commitment, it's operating risk, marketing, sales, and community, all together. Local support, national support. We see ourselves as a great team to really support Clearwater, support the amphitheater, and support the community.
Yeah, and we're excited to move forward. You have our commitment, you have Jeff Bennick's commitment, and we look forward to transforming it and doing exactly what we've done with Emily Arena and Yuengling Center, and make sure that Coachman Park and the amphitheater is extremely successful for this city, for this community.
Questions? Councilmember Albright.
So I do have some questions. This music event has been kind of in our minds for a long time, the amphitheater down on the water. I always hesitate to call it an amphitheater because there's no fixed seating, and that kind of scared people off in the beginning when we're talking about doing some bigger venue. And just to give you guys a kind of a heads up on the history of it, we had a consultant come down from New York that said, oh, no, you should be no bigger than 2,500 seats. And and I was like, it's got to be bigger than that. I mean, we don't want to be in competition with the music venues we already have. We got to do something in the next step. So I'm glad that we did go the bigger covered seating. That was another thing, we had to have it covered. But what I'm concerned about is being a good neighbor, number one. We've got, residential around. I mean, it's not out in the country like a lot of venues are. I mean, we've got residential right there, and we have moved it over to the north side to kind of get it away from Water's Edge, but the people there have a concern about the noise and the music and the volume of music, and we've discussed that before on how we're going to do that. I think we have more control now than maybe 10 years ago as far as how that goes. I wanted to know, I guess a question in that would be, how would you, that particular problem, how would you solve that problem with events? I mean, you did say one of the big events that was displaced, that's really loud music, and there's nothing wrong with diversification and diversity of events. I'm all for that, but how would you, number one, how would the sound problem be solved to make it good for the people that are listening, but not offensive for the people around it? Number two, the number of events. I mean, that was a big thing that we talked about. It sounds like you guys are ready to go with like all the time. I just want to, throw that out there that was a concern for us. I mean, that's been discussed in the community, how many events we're going to have. So let's start with maybe those two questions right there.
So I'm happy to jump in here. So one of the things that would be key for all of our
Come on
success.
up close,
Oh, sorry.
Mike.
What would be key for all of our success is to have good relationships with the neighbors, and understanding and having lines of communications that they understand what's coming, and then work to agree upon how and when the appropriate timeliness end. To your point, you went from what was perceived as a desired 2,500 seat amphitheater to 9,000. More people, more audio. So you're going to have, even if it's an orchestra, it's going to be louder because it's playing to 9,000 people versus 2,500 people. So but it is a mixture, right? It's a mixture of the relationships within the community, educating the community, embracing them and making them aware of what's going to be happening, but also kind of meet those guidelines or that criteria on what's appropriate end times and things along those lines. So, we typically have noise restrictions in where we are right now, and we work through those to make sure. To have concerts every night would be unrealistic, right? It's not going to be blaring music or whether you like it or not, right? If you don't like it, it's a little bit more blaring than it is sounding good, right? If it's one of your favorite artists. But essentially, we're talking about a lot of different types of activations, whether, a family show, as Peter mentioned, might be the Doodle Bops performing on stage, which isn't going to be that audibly loud. Where if it's, Wild Splash or Jimmy Buffett, it might be a little bit louder, it might be a little bit different, but then you might have spoken word, which is either something that is comedic, it might be something from an educational standpoint. There's all different types of programming that we're talking about coming into this space. So it's just a matter of educating the residents around and the businesses to make sure that they understand what is happening to manage their expectations a little bit as well.
In the past, we've had scheduling meetings with the community, so we can keep the community aware of what's coming. I'm sorry.
There's people that watch at home.
All right, sorry. We have scheduling meetings, we'll have a monthly meetings or so with community leaders so that everybody knows what we're looking at, what we're thinking of booking, so that everybody's aware of what we have going on at the amphitheater. We have an issue in Virginia Beach which you can speak to.
We're going through this identical conversation in the project in Virginia Beach, which is an indoor facility with an outdoor amphitheater attached. There's residential housing that literally overlooks the amphitheater, and so we're having discussions. One is the way sound is these days. You can tune the sound so it's specifically to your audience and there's not as much bleed to the residential around it. So that's the first point. The second, as Peter said, early curfews, a lot of discussion, a lot of communication. So there's no surprises. So really, when we talked about earlier with community partners, that's a very specific a point that we work on real early and just be sure that everyone's comfortable with where we're going.
Okay, and just one more question. From early on, you've said that you're going to invest, and I know that Venick invests with a lot of things in our community, and I love that, all the things that he does, but specifically willingness to invest in the amphitheater here. What are you talking about specifically by that?
It was an RFQ, right? It was a request for qualification, so there isn't a ton of detail in that. But what we'd like to do immediately is sit down with staff and say, okay, what's in your budget? What is not in your budget that maybe would enhance the facility? So it's really to sit down and say, what is the program specifically? What is being built? What is being proposed? Sit with architects, and then look at other areas that maybe we could enhance that and invest in financially.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add to that real quick, just as an example. Peter mentioned the facility that we just opened in Savannah, Georgia. Again, municipally owned facility. We came in as part of our relationship with the city, and we put, in total, it's going to be close to $7 million in the building. One, first to outfit the food and beverage stands, because that was not, to Peter's point, that was not in the budget, so we helped with that. And then we actually came in, we were so successful in our premium seating program that we're adding additional premium seating to the facility as well. Again, on our dime, and we get a return from it and share it with the city.
Other questions? Councilmember Bunker.
Not a question, but I watched your full presentation, and I was blown away. This really is going to be transformative. And I was excited to hear your ideas, like the spring training for the orchestras. Wonderful. And you talked about transportation and tying in with beach events, busing people perhaps back and forth. So you've been thinking big about this, and I think you've got the ability to do that. So I'm extremely excited.
Councilmember Teixeira.
I don't have a question right now, but I would like a further discussion.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I too was impressed with the material and information you shared. I have a couple of concerns. It seems to me, if we're talking about noise, that any concerns with noise really are dealt with the end date of a concert, or the end time of a concert. And so you either have weekdays, they have to end by 10, or weekends by midnight. I mean, truly, that's what it's really comes down to, right? Pretty much?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we do this in other venues, other facilities, we work at times, weekdays, weekends, it's part of the business.
Okay.
We deal with it at Emily Arena with Harbor, Harbor Island across the street, as well as now we've added, 1,300 new residential units right around our arena. 98 Rock Fest is probably one of our bigger events that, causes concern for our Harbor Island. We talk with them, we're working with the city, we work with the mayor, we work with the police, and we make sure we're adhering to every single noise ordinance to make that happen.
I think the other piece, too, if you look at this site, it's just tremendous. There's gonna be so many daytime events here that really won't be an issue for the neighbors at all. I mean, the ability to do festivals of different sizes, from, 2,000 to 8,000, that's really what excites us about the site, is, where do you find something right on the water like this? I mean, it's pretty special.
I also had a question about, so you mentioned in your proposal, there's a whole lot of mentioning about profit and maximizing profit and revenue, and I think that's fantastic. That's what it's there for. I mean, when we moved from 2,500 to a 9,000 max, venue, it's a different animal, and we've kind of got it as this economic generator right now. One of the things I need to understand better is when we talk about food and beverage being a profit generator and a premier food experience here, it's my understanding, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, that we don't, we have the venue, and then we have the back of house for the artists and all that business. We don't have a structure on that property, other than what may come up at a bluff development, for food service. And that's a big deal, because it's my understanding that we're constrained by the charter. We're not building another structure on that property for any premier food service. So I don't understand, what you're envisioning as this premier dining experience or premier seating, like box seating and all that stuff that I don't think we're
of any size. I mean, it could be food trucks. I mean, one thing that is very important to us, that we bring in local purveyors and buy locally and partner with local restaurants and businesses. That's the way to do business, and it's very successful. We do that in all the markets. So I think what we need to do is sit down and see, okay, what can be done here, what cannot be done, and then adapt. But there's so many different ways in today's world. You look at these golf tournaments and some of these outdoor events. We have these sort of semi-permanent structures that you can bring in, bring out, do what you need to do to present the event. So we've got a lot of flexibility in what we can do as a company.
okay. And then I found it interesting that, you're willing to or want to meet with staff to talk about how we are developing the amphitheater and the back of house and all that, with your input to maximize profit and maximize the pleasurable experience. And I have in the back of my head that you have a, zero carbon venue in Seattle. That's nice. That's fantastic. It's more than nice. It's fantastic. We have a contract with a company called Synergistics that is working with our city-owned buildings to reduce our carbon footprint. Have you guys ever worked with an outside, we have a contract with them. And so are you familiar with that kind of thing, and working with people that will have, I think, an input into that building?
We don't know them as a company, but yeah, to Peter's point, I mean, we have a whole division that's focused on sustainability in our venues. So we'll bring those experts out to meet with Synergistic to really be sure that we're putting all the best practices in place for your public assembly events, for this park. So that's it. Truly, I think, is one of the advantages that we offer, is that it's a whole part of our mission as a company and our vision, and we have a department that's just aimed at sustainability.
Another thing I was hoping to find in here or see is, in the references, and they're listed, I would ask, did staff call the references? And so I have that question about references, because I was thinking I'd like to hear from elected officials or city leaders in these different communities and find out, how does a community like this venue, and how are they? Are they good neighbors? And what does, I really want to see, what a lineup looks like in, Austin or Colorado, wherever you have those. And what is the blend of small-town community events versus these big names? And I'd like to understand, and again, I think we're just being asked to, who do we want to enter into beginning negotiations?
That's
But,
correct.
and so hopefully we can have another conversation at another time about those finite things. And with that in mind then, I guess, I just was concerned about understanding the limitations of what you can do on this property. And then I wanted to understand if staff reached out to the references, and then how did staff, actually do their scoring. And so that might come at the end of the second presentation. But I think, I have a lot of notes that I'd love to sit down if you're chosen, and then, or other meetings, we can do that.
And if you need to talk to Mayor Jane Castor or former Mayor Kreisman or Bonnie Weiss or any of the council members there, by all means.
Reach out.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yeah, one of my biggest questions is for our staff. I really expected to have a staff report as to why OVG was the selected vendor, and there's nothing in here other than the 4 criteria that you pointed out. Are there scoring sheets? Mr. Jennings?
There are scoring sheets and other information. Let's see, Jim, did you want to?
Yeah, we can get with our purchasing division and provide that information, the scoring sheets, the criteria that was used. And, basically, the criteria is stated out on the RFQ. So on the RFQ lists what the criteria was that was going to be judged on, but we can provide the scoring sheets, that's all public record. We can get with our procurement manager to get that done.
Yeah, I would have liked more from staff on this as to why you made the recommendation that you did. Just, this is the recommendation. This is a very big decision. So I thought this was a little on the disappointing side. I'll just be very frank about it. Thanks, Jim. Clearly, you've looked at the design of the amphitheater. I understand that you don't maybe know where you would invest capital, but surely you've looked at the design. Were we right in going with a larger covered venue? Don't be shy.
No, as we started to talk about the baby boomers up and down, the capacity as far as a niche in the market is spot on. These boutique amphitheaters, which is the term in our industry, are becoming more popular across the country, and the acts like to play them. We think this site is going to be a destination site, not just for patrons to come, but for artists to play. So we absolutely think you hit it right out of the park, and we know Duncan Webb very well, who helped you with some of those decisions, and we're certainly glad you went on the larger capacity than the smaller one that was proposed.
Right, and the key, and I think someone mentioned not having the fixed seating. That creates an ability to make the room the right size for the right event. It actually limits, it takes away all the restrictions, right? So if there's something that's in there that's appropriate for 2,500 to 2,800 people, we can seat it accordingly. If we go to the full 4,000 seated with the 5,000 on the lawn, that's appropriate. We have the flexibility to do that. So yeah, looking at the site, there's some questions still. And as we continue to evolve, at the end of the day, our goal is to have the opportunity to put the most diverse event mix in here, but make it right sized, right? I always say, like, if you go to a party with 100 people in it and it's a 1,000-person room, it's kind of a stinker. But if it's for 7,500 people, it feels like a really good party, right? So right sizing the space is spot on for what this does. And to Doug's point, we truly feel like this will be a destination play. There's a lot of things, there's a lot of different venues in our marketplace, right? Raymond James holds 60,000 people, Amelie's at 20, Yingling Center's at 10, 11, all the way on the other side of town. Ruth Eckerd Hall holds 2,200, the Mahaffey's at like 12 to 1,400. This allows, this room be able to flex bigger or smaller for what's appropriate. And there is a niche of boutique amphitheaters that are coming across the country that this fits right in perfectly, and it might even sneak in some of the bigger acts, but it also will be size appropriate for the smaller acts. And truth be told, this is a niche, and this was mentioned earlier, this is a niche size in this marketplace that doesn't exist. We talk about and I use the reference of the backside of the bell curve. As artists come on, they're playing smaller rooms, they continue to grow until they peak out at a stadium tour, and then they come back down on the backside of the bell curve. Right now, that 8,000 to 9,000 seat niche doesn't exist in our marketplace. You add the fact that it's a destination play on the water for a venue that can be year-round, right? Like you mentioned Denver and somewhere else. A lot of those amphitheaters have to close for the winter. It gets cold up there. We get to play with it 365 days a year. It allows for other things to happen as people come into our marketplace. Maybe the mix diversifies a little bit. But it goes back to kind of to your point, like looking at whatever that event mix is going to be, it's going to have to be authentic to who we are as the Tampa Bay community and as the city of Clearwater. So there's certain things that may not make sense anywhere else, whereas we have an influx of snowbirds into our community, something might be very niche that speaks to that audience who's very important to us. Because of the tourism dollars, the secondary homes, and as they come in and bring their disposable income down in our places and eat at our restaurants and go through our airports and rent our cars and do all that stuff and put heads in beds. So a lot of that stuff is going to be very specific to us. The best part is we're starting from scratch and we get to create an authentic mix from day one who truly speaks to who our users are.
Mr. Vinnick has been a wonderful addition to the Tampa Bay area. I think he's a model for a major franchise owner. What is the exact relationship between OVG and the Vinnick Group? What are going to be your roles? I mean, I understand why you brought the Vinnick Group in. It gives you local flavor, which you frankly don't have, although we have dealt with some of your companies in the past. I'll talk more about that one on Thursday. But what are going to be the roles and responsibilities? Who's putting up capital? Who's going to be managing the amphitheater on a daily basis?
Managing will be on a daily basis. Will be our organization, and we'll work collectively on the capital agreement once we understand what the needs are going to be. And you have our commitment from Jeff and our relationship with OVG to find that capital that is needed. But from an operating perspective, that'll be on us, just like we do the Yuengling Center and just like we do the Emily Arena. From a booking perspective, this is where you get the horsepower of both OVG as well as VSG. You get that booking from a scope of large promoters to local promoters and working together. So you have the full scope and gamut of everything. And then when you talk about fan and guest experience, that's really going to be on VSG because that's our expertise in this marketplace. As well as the procurement of part-time workers and bringing on and training all of those great people that are going to create that fan experience in Coachman Park. So you have that commitment from us that we will be the operators and managing the building for you and working with your team.
So we've got two for-profit companies here. How are you going to feed that beast?
Well, we're 50-50 partners, so it isn't, I don't think it's a beast, I think it's a great partnership. It also gives us the ability to do more for the community. Absolutely, we'll commit to a number of community days and we'll exceed that. So I think the ability to bring in the shows, make it profitable, be financially stable, gives you the opportunity to give back. So, and then when we do this in every venue that we're in.
And just, we're very early in this. Whoever we choose we'll be negotiating with. But how many shows a year do you anticipate? What do you think is right sizing for this type of a venue? And I also want to point out to people, you don't originate concerts. I mean, these concerts are going on tour, and they generally have a venue type in mind. We're going to kind of be on that tour as they come through Florida, go to Jacksonville, down Miami, avail themselves of other facilities that are somewhat similar, correct? I mean, somebody who's doing, Mahaffey, that type of show isn't necessarily going to do a concert here?
No, there's definitely.
Come on up to the mic.
I'm sorry. The reason why all these different venues happen in our marketplace is because there's different things that an artist wants to do, right? Sting is a great example. A couple years ago, we played Emily with Annie Lennox. Then he did a private or a small charity event at Mahaffey that was a juggernaut for charity, right? All the money went to charity. So yeah, a lot of the tours or the acts have a vision of what they're going to do as they go out through their cycle, right? They're all independent, right? They might want to do an acoustic set versus a full-blown production concert, things along those lines. However, we do and we will take risks for local things that make sense, that add to our marketplace, because sometimes there's things that are missing. If it's a country artist that's not touring or not nationally touring, that we feel like we need to mix in some country to make it, we'll go out and speak to that agent and do what we call a stick build show, and build that show from eggs to apples and market it, and we'll own the risk, and we'll take that and we'll go from there. There really is no limit, and that's kind of the beauty of what we do. And to go back to your point, what does that mix look like? What do we want it to look like? What is appropriate? I truly believe in the inaugural here for this thing, we could be looking at 30 to 40 concerts if we want to go down that path. And then you add in the legacy events, you add in the different type of community things, farmers markets, socials, food truck festivals, all of these different things that are possible, that not are only enhancing the amphitheater, but also elevating the awareness of Coachman Park. Because it's more than just an amphitheater. And everything that we put in there adds to whatever it is, and vice versa. So having that mix is going to have to be right-sized for what we believe to be true. We're also going to learn all of the things on what the building's capable of doing and not capable of doing, and how we want to do enhancement. And I think that's where Peter was talking about, implementing some different capital to make it better, or to make it more user-friendly. It might not be a front-facing experience. It might be adding a different type of loading dock door because it gets people in and out better, right? Because if the artists don't come in and have a good experience, they're not going to want to come back. So having all of those different things add to what we're trying to do. And yeah, it's not very specific. We don't have a ton of information. We also have never had this venue in market. We've never had a waterfront amphitheater that holds 9,000 people. So I believe that we have all the pieces in place with the local investment in our community and then the national power of OEG to put all those things together to make sure that we are doing the right things and using national examples to guide us, but then also what feels appropriate for us locally in the community.
How many community events do you do at Amelie or at Yingling?
We're north of 30 probably big ones, between 5K runs, fundraising walks. I think Steve referenced the Titus O'Neill backpack build. We do the On Bikes build. All of those things that we do, sometimes you don't hear about them. Sometimes they're things through the different charities, the Big Brothers Big Sisters breakfast. Those things aren't things that we publicize. One, because we don't need people coming down to them that aren't either registered through the walk or the run, or it's an invite-only thing for the donors for the Big Brothers Big Sisters or something along those lines. So, we look at ourselves not only at Amelie but also at the Yingling Center. We're an asset for the community. If we're not putting things in there that speak to different people in the community, we're only a partial community piece. We need to be 365 thinking about the different things and the way that we service all of the people in our community. There's certain acts that we put in there that I don't like. I don't listen to them or whatever. Doesn't mean all of you don't want to go there. It's not my job to decide what people are going to want, and my job is to make sure that we bring it to the marketplace as appropriate, and then make sure that we create the awareness to generate the most ticket sales from it, so those people can embrace what we're doing.
Mr. Griggs, you said that you brought skating rinks over to Pinellas. Where were those located when you did?
Not skating rinks, they are outdoor ball hockey rinks. So
Where'd you-
we built
where'd you-
Pinellas Park.
Pinellas Park? Both times?
Yeah, they're both
Okay.
there.
And Oldsmar, right?
Baltimore as well, yes.
Mr. Luco, can you help me in the materials that we received, Global Spectrum? What is the relationship between OVG and Global Spectrum?
We purchased Global Spectrum in the past year,
Okay.
and there's two division Spectra. So we
Is
purchased them.
Ovation still around?
Ovations became Spectra
Okay.
a while ago, and then we bought Spectra Food.
Okay? Any other questions for today? We won't be I'm not planning on putting this on consent. I plan on talking about it on Thursday. I know there are a number of people that want to speak to this. We also do have Ruth Eckert Hall in the room if anyone has questions for them at this time.
Yeah, I'm not ready for this consent item.
All right, well, we will decide this on Thursday. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 10-minute recess. we will reconvene the May 16th work session. Before we go to item 5.1, I just want to congratulate the chief because he really spearheaded this program for the entire county. And if you talk to other chiefs or the sheriff, they will tell you that this would not have happened without Chief Slaughter. So I want to commend you for it.
Thank you.
Item 5.1.
Approve an interlocal agreement between the cities of Largo, Pinellas Park, St. Petersburg, Tarpon Springs, Pinellas County, and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for the City of Clearwater to establish the Pinellas Regional Information Management Enterprise.
So what this ILA creates with the parties is the Pinellas Regional Information Management Enterprise, or PRIME, and that outlines the basic corporate structure of the administrative entity to manage a shared public safety CAD and RMS system in Pinellas County. The police department's CAD and RMS system has been in place since 2007, two different systems in our particular case currently, and both are kind of near their end of their useful life. We anticipated this, so in 2019, the Police Standards Council created a work group to explore the establishment of a shared public safety CAD and RMS system. This work group has researched available product features, similar consortiums and governance models, and the group collectively crafted an RFP together and published it through the sheriff for a CAD RMS product. And then the work group reviewed vigorously all the vendor responses and ultimately recommended a vendor selection for a company called Hexagon for this shared system. This selection of Hexagon was done with the mindset that the product would service the entire consortium, which is not just the police department, it's also your regional 911, your fire departments, and your EMS. It's an entire public safety ecosystem. The ILA establishes the admin entity with the board of directors so that each party will have a single vote regardless of size and operate and manage the prime group, which will manage the shared CAD and RMS system. It provides a cost-sharing model that is based on the total number of licenses and the number of licenses per agency. It's a 5-year agreement with an auto-renew each year thereafter for a total of 10 years. There is no financial component for the item that's in front of you today, but the financial cost will come before the council at a future date. There is a addendum that kind of gives you an estimate of what the cost breakdown is expected to be. This is based on not only the maintenance of the product, but the operational costs. The county has made a commitment to fund the capital outlay for the CAD and RMS system, which is currently expected to be about $9.3 million, which provides some very significant economies of scale based on moving forward. So I'd be more than happy to try and answer any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Consent?
Yep.
That was easy.
Not easier than that, sir.
6.1.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designations of residential low and water and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential district for 1827 on Bond Street.
Thank you, Governor, for planning and development. This voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.479 acre property consisting of one parcel of land occupied by a detached dwelling. The applicant is requesting annexation in order to receive sanitary sewer and solid waste service from the city. The applicant is aware that the city sewer impact assessment fees must be paid in full prior to connection and of additional cost to extend to the city sewer service.
Any questions? I have one strange one.
Yes.
So looking at the map, why does that property's water ownership reach all the way over to the other bank of that pond?
I have no idea. It's definitely odd, but.
Is that odd?
It looks odd when you see it, yes. I don't think I've ever seen another one quite like that.
Neither have I.
I'm not sure how or why that happened, but.
Okay. We'll hear that one on Thursday. 6.2.
Approve a future land use map amendment from the residential office general category to the commercial general category for a portion of property located at 1640 Gulf to Bay Boulevard.
Thank you. So this future land use map amendment involves a 0.74 acre portion of a 2.26 acre property located on the northeast corner of Gulf to Bay Boulevard and South Keystone Avenue. The applicant is requesting to amend the future land use category of that north 1/3 of the property from the residential office general to commercial general future land use category. The proposed amendment would allow the property to have one consistent future land use map category of commercial general across the entire site, and it would increase the development potential by about 4,900 square feet.
The applicant has indicated to us the desire to construct a car wash on that property, in addition to keeping the existing office building there. However, no site plans have been submitted at this time. And at its April 19th, 2022 public hearing, the Community Development Board made a unanimous recommendation of approval.
Questions? So has everyone been noticed within the necessary boundaries? Because a car wash can really increase traffic.
Yeah, like I said, we haven't received the site plan, so when that comes through, I believe they'll have to go through some noticing. I'm not sure the level of approval on the car wash at that site, but yeah, for this property, they have been, for the future land use and zoning, they've been noticed.
Okay. Item 6.3.
Approve of
Yes,
zoning
hold on.
atlas.
Timeout.
So sorry. I just want to, so when people are noticed about the land use change, they're not given any indication what somebody might put on there. It's just a change, right? And so if the car wash might fall through, something else might happen, that's when a specific would be sent to residents about a potential business there.
So for this case, yes, they received the notice for the future land use and zoning changes since they're concurrent cases. Depending on the use and the level of review with the use, they might not get a notice. If it's straight to building permit, it's just a staff level review. And then if it goes to level 1, they would, and level 2, they would have to go to the Community Development Board as well. So it really depends on that use when they come through for site plan approval.
So nobody should be getting any kind of notice about with the words car wash in it.
No.
It's just about, yep. Thanks.
6.3.
Approve a zoning atlas amendment from the office district to the commercial district for a portion of property located at 1640 Gulf to Bay Boulevard.
So this is a concurrent zoning atlas amendment to that same property we just discussed. It will be amending the zoning from office to commercial. Again, it'll allow one consistent zoning district across the entire property. And again, it was heard at the Community Development Board meeting on April 19th, and the board made a unanimous recommendation of approval.
Any questions? 6.4.
Approve the annexation initial future land use map designation of residential low and initial zoning atlas designation of low medium density residential district for an unaddressed parcel on Otten Street.
Thank you. So this voluntary annexation petition involves a 0.83 acre property consisting of one parcel of land that is currently vacant. The applicant has indicated a desire to construct a detached dwelling upon annexation, although no plans have been submitted at this time. The annexation would allow the property to receive the city's water, sewer, and solid waste upon site development. And the applicant is aware that the city's sewer and water impact and assessment fees would need to be paid in full prior to connection.
Questions? 6.5.
6.5 council is being continued to a date uncertain.
Any questions? 7.1.
Accept FDOT grant agreement amendment in the amount of $65,000 for the Clearwater Airport Security System Upgrade Project.
Mayor, Council, Eric Gandy, Marine and Aviation. So this is a grant amendment for the upgrades to the fiber system out at the air park. So we had an agreement with FDOT. They supplied funding for camera security systems as part of the master plan, and this is a request from council to accept additional funding from them to complete the fiber installation and upgrade the fiber at the facility. The $52,000 of this will come from FDOT, and $13,000 will come from a citywide connectivity project through IT.
Questions? So when we take grants like this requires us to keep the air park open for so many years. I just want everyone to understand every time we do this, which is constantly.
Sure. And it's anything that's consistent with the master plan that's enumerated in there.
But people ask us occasionally, why don't we close down the air park? And we would owe millions of dollars to FDOT because of grants throughout the years. Usually they're attached for 20 years or so.
I don't know the terms on them, but they're long-term, like the master plan's a 20-year project.
Yeah. Consent?
Yep.
7.2.
Approve a proposal from J. Kokalakis Contracting, Inc. for construction of Clearwater Harbor Marine Wave Attenuator at the guaranteed maximum price of $2.2 $2,289,695. Sorry.
It's Monday.
So, this project came to my attention about 2 weeks into my tenure. The design and the construction plan came to my attention to include this amount. So I had to do a lot of quick studying to learn about wave attenuators and the history of the Harbor Arena. I knew some basic information about it, an approximate age, but as I started to look into it, I came to the understanding that there have been a number of studies done over the last several years to address failures in some of the systems out there. For the public's consumption, the wave attenuators are essentially a floating breakwater that goes around the perimeter of that marina. That marina was conceptualized in 2003. There were feasibility studies done and conversations about it through that period of time. It wasn't designed until 2008 and ultimately built in 2010. Hurricane Irma did some damage to one of these wave attenuators, and in 2018 they did an assessment as to probable causes of the failure and redesigned a new wave attenuator system. So ultimately what happened is in 2018 it was required to be done as an emergency repair because the damage was so significant, and they ended up replacing that. Subsequent to that replacement, they began to look at an overall study of the facility. That was began in 2020, and ultimately some recommendations came in indicating that there was some additional potential for failures throughout the facility. And the majority of it was focused on the wave attenuators and the pile guides, and some of the study indicated that there were some potential failures related to the design of the pilings, the attenuator, pile guides, and the installation, because some of the pilings hadn't been driven to the depths necessary to retain these things. So fast forward to 2021, and we began a more in-depth review of some of these failures, and they identified 3 more attenuators were in a progressive state of failure. I have a couple photos of those just so everyone gets some perspective here. So I think this is probably the best. This is the area in question. These are the 3 wave attenuators that we're talking about today.
So that's the southern fetch.
Yes, that is the South Basin. This would be one of the pile guides. As you can see in that photo, there's some cracking and some corrosion around that. And this is another area of those same attenuators where the pile guide has essentially gone away. I don't know if this is more helpful. The pile guide has gone away. And the emergency repair involved heavy chains, and then ultimately this solution. So this is temporary in nature. The challenge with this particular problem is that should these let go during the course of a storm, there are 3 of them, 50 feet long, multiple tons apiece, and they can cause significant damage. So for me, upon taking the role of director, I recognize this as an emergency. Not that it hadn't been pursued as such previously. Some of the documents relay to that, but ultimately for me it was a here and now problem. So we tried to expedite this as much as possible. We had some challenges because of the single council meeting in April to get before you. The initial time, the idea was to try and get this done before the height of hurricane season. Based on the lead times to build these attenuators, we're not going to get there. The quickest we can possibly get this done is by December. So unfortunately, we had to hold our breath through last hurricane season. We're going to have to do so again this year. But it is an exigency. We need to get this done. The challenge for us certainly going forward is that there are other wave attenuators that have been identified as potentially problematic going forward. The exact number could be as high as 30, but we don't know at this juncture what's going to need immediate attention. I've been in communication with finance, and we've got some plans to try and address that, and some CIP money going forward, but it's going to be a challenge. Our hope is that new design, and I've got a picture of that, the new design captures the pilings in the center. The pilings are made of steel as opposed to concrete, and they're round, allowing the current to flow through them without scouring the sea bottom around them when it impacts them. That was the design of the north attenuator that was put in 2018. And the components, we specified stainless steel as opposed to the previous design, which involved galvanized steel. So it's our belief that this is a much more robust system, and that the engineer is the same engineering firm, Erickson, that did the assessment of the previous failures. And we're hopeful that that assessment and their oversight allows us to make sure that these piles are driven to the proper depths and they're robust enough to alleviate any future problems with these three attenuators. The challenge for them also, they had to integrate new design with the older design. So some scope changes resulted in the cost of this thing. And unfortunately, it was technology at the time was challenging yet expensive, and we find ourselves in a position to have to replace an expensive component. Any questions?
I can't express how disappointed I am in wave trim and the other vendors that were used back then. I can't believe that there isn't some level of liability. But at the same time, we have to fix this. There's no choice.
Sure. I can communicate that with legal department and share the failure assessments, and perhaps that's an evaluation that could be done. I know, historically this was a long time ago, but there's potential for legal to look at that, I guess.
It was. Are they still an engineer of record, Tara? No? Okay.
There's nothing we can do.
Mr. Margolis?
I'd have to really review the agreements with them back then, but this was quite a while ago, as Mr. Gandy pointed out. So I'd be glad to take a look at it, but...
Because we're looking at undesirable materials for the environment, poor design, and poor installation. It's not just a little error. It was a consistent failure.
I think it's at least worth looking at.
Yeah. Especially with this ticket.
And potentially a lot more. Other questions? Councilmember Albrecht?
Yeah, just a comment. I went by and took a look at the north one that was restored or rebuilt, and those pilings are much bigger. I mean, they're round, and they're in the middle, which probably is better for, the thing in a storm. I could see probably takes care of the wave action better on that, so.
That appeared out of their assessments and analysis, is that design, because the pile guides aren't on the outside, on a single side, that it weathered the wave action much better. There's also references to wave studies and what they used to calculate the potential exposure that may have been off too.
I mean, these were originally, from Northern Europe is where we got these designs. Because we had a referendum in '06 that allowed for the marina to be built. And so this was supposedly state-of-the-art at the time, or what we were promised. Kokalakis is a very good construction company, but have they done this type of work before?
They were involved in the north attenuator.
Okay. Other questions? Consent?
Yep.
8.1, thank you, sir.
Approve purchase orders to Hydronautics and Torrey Membrane USA, Inc. for the supply of reverse osmosis membranes.
Morning, Mayor and Council. Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. The item before you today is for the approval of purchase orders for reverse osmosis membranes used in the treatment of raw water in the city's water treatment plants. The membranes filter out salt and other contaminants from the raw water as part of the process to produce our drinking water. There were 6 respondents to our request for bids, and we're recommending award to Hydronautics and Torrey Membrane USA in the amount of $300,000. These are 1-year contracts with an option for 2 1-year renewals. I'm asking for your approval to award, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Consent? 8.2.
Approve a contract to Carva Machinery Company LLC for additional smart cover systems associated with wastewater system manhole sewage level monitoring equipment.
Rich Gardner, Director of Public Utilities. The item before you today is a contract for additional smart cover systems, installation, and maintenance. This equipment is used to monitor water levels in sewers and helps us prevent sanitary sewer overflows as well as customer backups. Installation of this equipment is part of a recent agreement between the city and FDEP. They may also be installed proactively in our system. The contract is with Hudson Pump for a not-to-exceed amount of $400,000. The contract is scheduled to start on May 20th and run through November 30th of 2023. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Gardner? Vice Mayor?
So I love this language that you have on the legislative text, and the idea that we spend money to save money with these covers. And so you've got here, this standardized product provides better integration and efficiency with the city system than other similar products, which results in cost savings. So my question is, can we report out those cost savings and really be, front-facing with that? That, not only are we doing good for the environment with this, but we're saving money as well?
So the majority of the cost savings is going to be fines that are not levied. So I don't know how I could report those out. It's the fact that we're able to be proactive and prevent an overflow so we don't get fined.
It's an ounce of prevention.
Yeah.
Okay,
Don't know how many pounds of cure.
okay. Okay.
Consent?
Yep.
9.1.
Authorize a 1-year extension to the current purchase order with Jet Age Fuel, Inc. for the purchase of unleaded and diesel fuel.
Good morning, Perry Conzen, Fleet Manager. On September 5th, 2019, Council authorized a purchase order with Jet Age Fuel in the annual amount of $2,700,000 for the purchase of unleaded and diesel fuel for 1 year and 2 1-year renewal options per ITB 37-19. Per the milestones in the ITB, the term was intended to be for 1 year and 3 1-year renewal options totaling a 4-year contract. General Services is requesting authorization to extend the contract for this additional year. In addition, with the increase in the cost of fuel, General Services is also requesting an increase of $500,000 for the final term, bringing the total amount to $3.2 million. Are there any questions?
Questions? At what point do these additional fuel costs start to affect our current rates in different departments?
As far as...
Is this something we just absorb? But if rates on fuel stay this high for all of our fleets and everything else, solid waste is natural gas, most of them. But if we start to see this in all the enterprise funds, they have increased costs.
Right.
Is there a point at which we need to raise rates or put a surcharge in to make certain that we're staying?
Mayor, those are factored in the rate studies that Jay does annually. So they'll take that information, trend it out, and include it in the rates. Yes.
And then in one of the milestones for the contract, at the very last line, it says no fuel charges will be accepted for this contract. That I'm sure is going to change in the future as long as we see this progress and increase.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
But as you gave a presentation as you talk about transitioning to EVs, right? That will protect us from some of these fluctuations that we don't have a whole lot of.
Yes, going forward in the longer term it will. But as we see how rapidly things can change in the next few years, there's a lot of speculation in the market going forward, especially in these next 2 years. I check in on the EIA, which is the Energy Information Administration, and they are very concerned about the energy supply uncertainty going forward in these next few years.
But I would also point out, even if we had EVs, our utility may raise rates if their inputs for natural gas, for instance, which is generating the electricity that the EVs use, we're not necessarily completely exempt.
You're correct.
So,
But energy supply uncertainty doesn't really apply so much to our Sunshine State with solar, right? If we're controlling it ourselves, people who do control it themselves.
At a certain level, and going forward, that'll expand, but we're not there yet.
I know.
So,
But we're on our way.
yeah.
consent?
Yes.
10.1.
Mayor, this is a request to settle a case of City of Clearwater versus Hunstein. This is different than a lot of other litigation that we have. This is offensive litigation, meaning that this was a case where there were code enforcement liens placed on property, and council authorized a foreclosure on that property after a set period of time. Mr. Fuino, would like to answer any questions or speak to it?
That's all. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All the only thing that we would add is that I review the application for a lien reduction, and it doesn't meet all the requirements of policy 6.9, which is what council considers when reducing the fee. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I guess the only question would be, if they don't sell the property.
Well, and that's built into the settlement agreement. If they don't, or then they will have 6 months to keep the property in compliance, and if not, the lien will come back.
Start to foreclose. Any questions? Consent? 10.2.
10.2 is a defensive settlement. Difficult case. Not a huge fan of it, but I reluctantly endorse the settlement. Mr. Fuino?
Sure. Good morning, Council. Michael Fuino, Assistant City Attorney. In this case, a civil action was filed against the city. The plaintiff was collided with an unmarked police vehicle, which was momentarily driving the wrong way on US 19 while attempt to effectuate a takedown. The plaintiff had incurred injuries to her neck and her back and surgeries to both. Her past medicals were in excess of $350,000. The offer from the plaintiff to settle the case is $120,000, in which she'll dismiss it and fully release the city. And given the amount of past medicals, the potential for future medicals, pain and suffering award, and the probability that a jury would find liability on our case, I'm recommending that we accept the settlement.
Questions? Consent?
Yes.
All right, any questions on second readings, 10.3 through 10.8? Okay. Come on.
I know.
Ugh. All right. So, before I have the clerk read this agenda item, as I said in the paper, this is a very sensitive subject, and one that deals with people's lives and livelihoods. I don't take that conversation lightly. I apologize to the employees of Clearwater Gas for the turmoil that this conversation will bring. We also have to have this conversation in the public, as sunshine law demands. This is one of those times I don't like sunshine, because I'd rather talk about it privately and find out where everybody is, but we don't have that choice. And so this conversation is going to cause some angst, some confusion perhaps, and certainly a lot of different opinions. I also want people to know, regardless of whatever we do with the gas company, that if we keep it, or if for some reason we sell it, gas is gonna continue to be sold. Because whoever would buy it would continue to have to sell gas to get a return on their investment. So with that, Ms. Call?
Discuss future of Clearwater gas system.
Mr. Jennings?
Mayor, members of the council, today would like to have a conversation, and at the end of the conversation, a direction from you as to next steps. Last November, after I started, began to have conversations with most of you. Councilmember Teixeira was not on the council at that time, about frankly, everything in the city. As the new city manager, I felt it was important to begin to look at the way in which we do everything, and certainly all of the various departments and enterprise funds. In conversations that we've had, and I certainly recommended a valuation study, which is exactly what we have done to date. There was a valuation study done that listed a median price of $115 million. And so today, Mr. Ravens will make a presentation to the council so you fully understand exactly what that means and what it means to the city in terms of the dividend. So if it's okay with you, Mr. Ravens.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Jay Ravens, Finance Director. A couple of slides here if I can find those. Well, I did have, looks like they've been cleaned off. Here we go. Apologize. As Mr. Jennings indicated, a valuation was completed by the Houston office of Raymond James. They used 3 different valuation methods. The first used history and forecasted earnings that the city provided to arrive at a range of estimated values for the utility. Another method looked at valuations of publicly traded utilities to estimate a separate range of values. And a third method looked at selected comparable prior sales of utilities to arrive at a third range of values. The valuations under all 3 methods ranged from a low of $86 million to a high of $138 million, with the average valuation at $115 million. It should be emphasized that these are very preliminary, very high-level estimates, and the actual value could differ significantly. There's been some discussion of the dividend that the gas company pays back to the general fund. In addition, the gas utility shares overhead citywide, for instance, the cost of the finance department, the cost of the legal department. So there's other costs, potential costs to the general fund if the gas utility is sold, as that overhead should decrease, but a certain portion of it is going to remain. And we did a rough calculation of what that would look like to basically make the general fund whole. Our estimate was in the range of $4.75 to $5 million a year that would be needed to make the general fund whole if the gas utility was not available to help subsidize, both with the dividend and also the sharing of the overhead costs. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Mayor, what we are looking for from the council today is direction as to whether you want to proceed with, and I want to stress there's no decision being made on whether to sell the gas company. It's simply to test the market as to what the market would be for the gas utility. And so today we are seeking your guidance as to whether you want to move forward with that process, which would more than likely require hiring a broker that would put the gas company out. And then, therefore, then we can get the actual value of the gas utility in the marketplace.
So, I want to say a couple things before I open it up to questions and comments, because there's some things I'd like to discuss. You know, Clearwater Gas System is an enterprise fund. And so it should run like a business. And I have to say, you know, from what I can gather, I don't think we have been running it as aggressively as we used to. And that's been a conversation I've had since coming back into office in 2020. And my opinion is, if we're going to run it, we have to run it as a private enterprise would run it. And so if we keep it, my opinion is that we need to be more aggressive and allow it to expand. Now, we can have a lot of different arguments about, you know, the efficiency and a lot of your electric appliances are being run by natural gas indirectly today. But a lot of the appliances that are at your home that are gas, they're being operated at the point of service, and in many ways that can be more efficient. I don't really want to go into all the extremes of that, but some states, though, are starting to outlaw the sale of new gas appliances. Florida is not one of those states, and I don't anticipate they will be one of those states for a very long time. But I do come from a business of trying to buy low and sell high, so I do think we at least have to discuss this, as painful as it can be for the employees, whether we are at peak value, especially if we are not going to run the enterprise as an ongoing business and being aggressive. My other concern, though, is if we sell this, the influx of money that we would be receiving. First of all, we have to make up for the loss through the dividend that Mr. Ravens has raised. I think the amount of support that the gas system obviously is giving to the general fund is a whole nother discussion, frankly. Seems like they've been carrying a larger burden than maybe they deserve. But my concern is if we got a lump sum of money, that we would find all sorts of ways to spend it. And this is something I've been talking to Mr. Margolis about, and even Ms. Aiken before he came along. Is there a way to put this money, should we sell it, and that is a big if, but can we put it in a lockbox? And can it be invested so it can grow, like an annuity? Mr. Margolis seems to think that we cannot invest it like we have our pension plan invested, and allow income to spin off. My concern is if we build new facilities, then you have operations and maintenance of all those facilities. At some point, the money runs out, and now you have all of these different programs and buildings, and how do you pay for them? So I'd like to see, if we did it, the money that it goes into a lockbox in some way, and that the only time you can break glass is in case of emergency, and the voters have to approve it, not a city council. Because we can come up with a lot of great ideas, and that's how Penny for Pinellas originally was. Penny for Pinellas is a great program, but it resulted in a lot of new buildings being built. And we had the capital to build them, but then you've got to man them, you've got to maintain them, and those costs continue to escalate through time. And so that's my greatest concern about this discussion. So I just wanted to kind of frame some issues that I've been thinking about. Who else has comments or questions? Councilmember Albritton?
So, I guess the number one thing in my mind is, on this discussion, is does Clearwater Gas benefit the citizens of Clearwater? Well, yes, I think it does. To the tune of 4 to 5 million a year in our general fund. I know when, in the inception, it was to get out and expand it as an enterprise fund, and which they, I think, have done very well at. They've gone in, I mean, we're not just in Clearwater, we're off into Pasco County where all the growth is, which is good. We supply Bel Air, we supply Pasco County, and we're putting new lines in. If we sell it, well, first of all, they're gonna be selling gas, as you said. If the city of Clearwater does away with it, somebody's gonna buy it and it's gonna continue on. So it's not like it's going to affect the, natural gas distribution. There'll be somebody taking it over. Will their rates be competitive, like, ours tries to be competitive in the market? Maybe not. So I don't have a problem putting it out there and getting information. There's nothing wrong with information to see, even if, right now we're saying it's between, it's 115 million, that kind of the average of what we think we could get for it. It could be a lot more, could be a lot less, but you don't know for sure until you go out into the market. So I'm okay with getting the information, but right now, I think it's a valuable enterprise fund for us, and I'm really not interested in selling it. But I'm okay with getting information.
Councilmember Teixeira.
This is gut-wrenching because there's so many things to consider, and the ripple effect is wide. The employees and the effect on the citizens of Clearwater. And so in my personal experience, whenever I have to make a difficult decision where my Catholic guilt can factor in, I always fall back to get as much information as possible so that my decision is based on facts and information. So based on that, I would like to go forward and get more information, but this will not be an easy decision because there's a lot of people that it affects. And it shouldn't be a decision taken lightly.
Well, this is a tough one. If we sell it, the price is going to go down every year, so we'd be selling it at a peak time. I don't know how those dividends would decrease over the decades. On the other hand, we need that, we need that $5 million a year, I think. I really do believe we should be out of the gas business, but I hate thinking of throwing people out of work. As far as the money we could make from a sale, would we be able to create an electrical utility for the city? Or would we need vastly more money to do that and then get a dividend from the electric?
I don't know that we would create one. We would likely use our power to acquire it, usually over the strong objection of the reigning utility, which in this case would be Duke Energy and FPL. Cities have done it. I came from a city that owned an electric utility, but it is a very expensive and lengthy undertaking. It would be a big strategic decision for council to make, but it can be done, and it has been done.
Thank you. As far as the gas department not being sold aggressively enough, what would that look like?
Well, I think there's been questions about expanding the network of the gas system, and should we be out promoting it as strongly as we are or could. There are a lot of developments up in Pasco that are being developed. That's where there's huge growth, obviously. Moffett is going to build a new campus. That's going to bring a lot of employment up there and a lot more people, and a lot of the developments Mr. Warrington, why don't you come up? A lot of the developments have been incorporating natural gas. So I would question your comment that the revenues that the gas system are bringing in are going to diminish. If anything, they're probably going to continue to expand.
You don't think that there's going to be much less use of natural gas by 2050?
I don't know by 2050, but I could safely say for the next 20 years, I don't think there's going to be a reduction. And I think you're seeing issues in Europe right now where they thought that they were going to wean themselves off of fossil fuels a lot faster, and they found that that isn't working. And in fact, they're firing up coal plants right now in Germany because of their dependence on Russian oil. So I am fine. I think technology over time will lead people to make decisions about whether they want to convert over to solar or wind or anything else. But I do think it's, people's decision to do it. And if it's competitive, they will. But, Mr. Warrington, how much more expansion is potentially there in Pasco County?
Oh, I've said that I believe that we have the capacity to grow to about 75,000 customers, and we're just crossing 31,000 now. We are the fastest growing by percentage gas utility in America. We've been growing between 6.5% and 8% a year, so I think we've been pretty darn aggressive. Every subdivision that's been built in Pasco and most in Pinellas as well has gone gas. We've got one going right now that may not go gas, but it's because they're in a Withlacoochee gas cooperative or electric cooperative area where they are holding them hostage for $800 per lot. If they don't go all electric, they have to pay an extra $850 or something like that per lot, and they're not willing to put out the extra capital. So we may lose that one subdivision, but all the other subdivisions have been built in recent times up in Pasco have gone gas. So I believe we're in the middle of we'll double again, or at least double again in the next 20 years.
And so the acquiring company, if that's what the direction we went, they're going to look into that, obviously. So, but I don't think it's a diminishing client base.
And we've begun discussions with the hospital, the new hospital up there. They're just now starting to make their plans on what will be there, and that will be not only Moffitt Hospital, but also the whole community that supports the hospital around it. And we've started talking to them about that.
Other questions, comments? Vice Mayor?
I think, I appreciate our new city manager coming in and taking a real holistic look at how our city operates and doing our due diligence in multiple departments. I just think that's prudent operating behavior. We are stewards of our citizens' money, and, we're tasked with making good financial decisions. And so I think sending it out to a broker to get an evaluation and see if it's works well, if the numbers line up and it's a wise decision, as you said, it makes sense to buy low and sell high with a commodity. And so I think it's a good idea to go out there and check it intermittently. I think, maybe every 10 years you would do something like this with an asset and to see where are we at and how are we doing, and then we reevaluate and move on. It's not something, you do all the time. But, we did have a presentation from Saul Haroun about the energy sector, so we have that as a data point, an expert who came and presented to consider that information as well. And I too would say, I am incredibly sensitive to city employees in every department, and I think, if it plays out that we decide that we think we want to sell the gas company, gas is not going away. The same location is there. It's a brand new building. I would hope that employees who specialize in gas would keep those jobs. I would have no reason to believe they wouldn't. But, that's a potential discussion, maybe, but I think the question being asked today is simply, do we want to do our due diligence and get a valuation of an asset that we haven't looked at, I don't know, ever, and see if it's a good time to do something different with it.
I think it was looked at in the 90s, wasn't it, Mr. Warrington?
Yeah, it was in the late 80s, it was put on the market, and we were worth, at that time, about $8 million. So we've significantly grown the utility over that period of time.
Was there a lot of angst at that time, or was it kind of like, okay, it's okay to take a look
Well,
at it?
the biggest thanks, as I understand it, and I wasn't here at that time, they hired me shortly after that to aggressively run the gas utility, but there was a lot of discussion around the fact that there were 43 gas employees at the time that would be looking at losing, moving or losing their jobs. There was also 20 to 25 other employees in the city that were supported by the funds of the gas system, and that became, that was, I understand, was an issue of, wow, this is more than just the gas utility. This is other people, customer service, meter reading, fleet, places like that support our operations.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I think I'm hearing consensus to at least take the next step and get some additional information.
Thank you.
And, I know there's some gas employees in the audience. We don't let people talk at work sessions, but if you have opinions, please email the council. We want to hear them. And I hope you do take the comments to heart that have been given today, and to all of your other employees, okay? Anything else, Mr. Margolis?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jennings, anything else?
Yes, I just wanted to remind the council and the public that this Thursday at 8 a.m. There will be a special meeting of the city council. It'll be a strategic budget meeting, and so that is this Thursday. Tonight, we have a council public meeting to discuss ARPA funds as well as the strategic plan. That's at begins at 6 p.m. Until 7:30.
Are we going to get some materials for Thursday morning's work session?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to get those at least by tomorrow, so that we have time to review them. Yes?
Is that strategic budget meeting with the same facilitator as last time? Are we picking up where we left off?
No, so these are two different things. The strategic budget meeting on Thursday is required for us to come and present to the council kind of basically a check-in. So we will have materials. We also have materials for this evening and the other. We have an ARPA one-pager and some other things that we'll be passing out tonight. A comment card so people can leave comments, things like that. So.
Can we please have all those materials sent to us early this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, any future items for discussion?
Surprise, surprise.
Shocking.
I know, isn't it? It's okay. This thing is not, behaving. I saw yours wasn't. Okay, here we go. I hope that we could have a discussion about giving direction. Okay, here we go. About our about the design of the new city hall, and really the design of any new city buildings, any structures. I would like this council to send a unified message, I hope, or we can have this conversation about, we want that design to minimize operating costs and to maximize clean energy and to be as close to net zero buildings as possible. If we can just put that out there, that whenever we send out RFPs or people do any discussions, that that is what the city of Clearwater aims to do with any building. So I'd like to have that as a discussion topic. You know, we have Largo and Dunedin are both working on new city halls and incorporating sustainable features and all that stuff, and I think there are learnings we can actually absolutely take away from Dunedin, who's had some stumbling blocks, and Largo, who hasn't broken ground yet. So I'd like that for a future time. I'd also like to know if we can give firm direction about our expectations for planting and landscaping, especially at Imagine Clearwater. It's a large park area, it slopes down to the water, and, you know, really, what are we committed to as far as herbicides, pesticides, chemicals on our public property? So I'd like to have that discussion. And simply, I think it's that, you know, do we agree to operate in accordance with green print and at the highest levels possibility of sustainability? And I just, if we can get buy-in up here and a unified message, then I don't have to keep asking about it on agenda items. So if we could do that kind of a discussion, that'd be great. And then finally, if we can have a discussion, hopefully in the near future, on our thoughts and approaches to dealing with the homeless in downtown Clearwater. I know there's been a flurry of activity, a couple of meetings. I didn't go to last Monday's meeting because I was on a plane, did go to Thursday's meeting of different stakeholders. And I'd like to know, because we can't have discussions about that other than up here, what our thoughts are on that as we are, you know, revitalizing downtown and we've got our park, and how are we going to handle our, you know, the homeless that we have downtown.
Well, I think we had a really good discussion on Monday, so Councilmember Teixeira and Bunker were there, as well as myself and the city manager. I think there was buy-in from all of the organizations that the way we're doing it is not the way to go forward in the future. That they're working against the ultimate goal, and that there has to be some wraparound services. So I also think in that discussion, we need to talk about the other stakeholders that are affected by homelessness. I walked up this morning to the library. It is a pig pen out there.
It is.
It's embarrassing. And, you know, I don't want to point a finger at a single group, because I know there's just citizens that think the world is their trash can, but a lot of it does come from the homeless. And there's a lot of other effects from them. So I think we need to be compassionate, but at the same time, we need to think about the effects to all of our other citizens and businesses and everything else. And if we just keep throwing money at it, does it really solve the problem? And after sitting on HEP's board for 5 years, I know that is not the case. So I'll be happy to have that conversation and the others. Anything else? Anyone else? We're adjourned till Thursday.